Meeting will come to order. We are now holding our regular scheduled meeting held Tuesday, August the 18th, 2009, 9 a.m. At this time, I'd like to call on Kenneth Jones, chaplain of the V&A Hospice of Indian River County, to give the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to be given by Commissioner Gary Wheeler. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the assembling of our elected officials. Father, I would ask that you would guide and direct each of them, and that you would bless their individual gifts, talents, and abilities. And as they pursue today's business agenda, that you would collectively unite their wisdom, that they may make decisions and choices that are for the benefit of every resident of Indian River County. I ask that your grace and blessing shall be upon them. And I ask these blessings in the name of the Father, and all things that are representative of his love, his compassion, and his wisdom. Amen.
Amen.
Join me in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chaplain Jones and Commissioner Wheeler. At this time, we do have some modifications to the agenda. We have the request to speak from Debbie Cross pulled, which is 10B2. Item 8T is pulled from the consent agenda and moved to departmental matters under 12A5.
It's also being pulled now.
Pulled totally?
Totally pulled, yes,
right.
sir.
Commissioners, it'll be deleted. So 8T is pulled from the consent agenda. Item 8BB has been pulled from the consent agenda, and item 8CC has been pulled from the consent agenda. I believe, other than
9A, we are not.
That's the sheriff's issue?
It will be, we're pulling it, but we want to explain, I think legal wants to explain the process and what the commission has to do, and so they will be doing that at 9A.
All right, we're going to leave it on there then, but just to let everybody know that the fireworks we expected probably won't happen at that.
Yes,
okay.
And I'll make a presentation at 9A.
Okay. All right. Commissioners, is there any other additions, modifications to the agenda? I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve as amended.
Got a motion to approve from Commissioner Flesher. I'll take that as a second, Commissioner O'Brien, if that's okay.
Yes, sir.
Got a motion to approve and seconded. And if there's no further discussion, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next, that moves us to the approval of the minutes, Commissioners.
Move approval of July 7th and July 14th.
Second.
Got a motion from Commissioner O'Brien to approve the minutes for July 7th, 2009, July 14th, 2009, and seconded by Commissioner Wheeler. If there's no discussion, we'll vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. That moves us, Commissioners, to the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull item J.
Item J from Commissioner Solari. Anyone else? I'll entertain a motion
Move to approve consent as amended.
Got a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended. I'll second that. And if there's no discussion, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Solari, item J.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Without making too much of this, I'm just going to be voting against this item. I just didn't want to vote for it on consent. I voted against it at Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council meeting and at the MPO, basically because there was no real financial data behind it. I'm afraid that when the stimulus money runs out, we won't know how to pay for it, and just haven't seen any backup financial for it.
Okay.
So with that,
Okay.
I'm not going to make a motion for it.
I understand that.
I move approval staff recommendation.
We got second that. Motion to approve from Commissioner O'Brien, second from Commissioner Flesher. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
The motion passes 4-1 with Commissioner Solari dissenting. All right. Moving right on along. That does move us now to item 9A, and I will turn this over to our attorney. Ms. Bell, welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner. This item has been withdrawn by the sheriff. Florida law allows a public employer or a union to declare a bargaining impasse in writing. Then, either party may seek mediation or a special master to resolve the disputed impasse issues. There is a third option, and that is to waive the special magistrate in writing and agree to appear before what the Florida statutes call the legislative body. By definition, the legislative body is the Board of County Commissioners. Once that decision is made in writing by the parties, you are required by law to become the decision maker. This option was selected by the union and the sheriff and reduced to writing signed by both parties approximately 5 p.m. last night. That triggered two things. One, you became the decision makers, and two, you became in what is called the insulated period. The insulated period means that you may not have ex parte discussions with either the sheriff's office or the employees of the sheriff's office or the union concerning the merits of the positions of the parties at impasse. This is because you will be serving in a quasi-judicial fashion to resolve the impasse in a public meeting. The sheriff and the union have agreed that this matter, instead of being heard today, should be heard on September 8th. The reason the insulated period is imposed is to avoid the appearance of impropriety and ensure that both parties receive equal treatment. Any prohibited communication may be considered an unfair labor practice if the communication concerned the merits of the issues at impasse and was made in such a fashion as to deny the opposing party an adequate opportunity to respond. The prohibition is applicable to verbal and written communications. The prohibition will last through the time you resolve the impasse at the public meeting. The prohibition is, of course, lifted during the public meeting for the presentation that will occur at that meeting. On the 8th of September, generally what will happen is one party will make a presentation, the second party will make a presentation, the first party will have an opportunity for rebuttal, and you will then have an opportunity to ask questions and make a decision. Thereafter, that decision will be reduced to writing by our office, and it will be a final decision and will be binding on the parties.
Commissioners, any question?
I do want to say one more thing. You will be receiving a memorandum to this effect. I wanted to get this on the record. I also wanted to get on the record that you were notified prior to this meeting that the insulation period is in effect.
And so the correspondence and conversation that I've had with the sheriff as well as with deputies is okay, but not from this point forward?
That is correct. The insulated period did not begin until both parties signed the writing. So anything that occurred before the commencement of the insulated period is acceptable. Anything afterwards, not acceptable.
Okay.
Are there any questions?
Commissioners?
Yes, I guess one question or one comment. As one commissioner, I would like to encourage the sheriff and the PBA union to go back and look at this. And I know they've been through a lot, and I think it would be well for them to go to the special magistrate where it will be dealt with objectively with people that aren't part of the political system in this county, and it takes it more out of the political realm and puts it into the realm of a special magistrate that has no ties to the community that can look at this objectively. And I would just ask that the PBA and that the sheriff's office at least go back and reconsider this. Obviously, we'll hear it, but I think all parties will be better off settling this outside of these chambers. Just a comment.
Any other comments, Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I agree with what Commissioner Wheeler stated. I think it would be appropriate to go to the magistrate, but in the event it does come back to us, I'm just thinking procedurally, September 8th will probably be a pretty long agenda again, and I would imagine this might take quite a few hours to resolve, and we have a lot of staff that would be waiting for other items on the agenda. So I don't know either if we want to set a time certain for this on the 8th, or even a special call meeting on the 9th in the evening where people can attend. I think we just ought to prepare for a long session and plan appropriately.
That's good. That's a suggestion. Listen, I'm going to suggest a time certain, perhaps 1 o'clock. That way, we'll know that we'll be able to take care of probably most of the issues at that time. Gives everybody that wants to speak on this a time certain to be here on it. And with the deputies working the hours they work, I'm not sure a night's going to be better than a day.
Right. Either way would be fine for me. I just think we need to kind of get some certainty here so everybody knows what's going on.
Yeah.
And, Marion,
Yes, sir.
do the two parties need to agree to that, or can we just go ahead and say 1 o'clock and we're...
It would be better if they agreed. You, as the legislative body, have the ability to set the time of the hearing that is most convenient for you. If the desire of the board is that the hearing occur at 1 o'clock on September 8th, I will prepare a writing to that effect.
I would, I'm looking at my calendar to find a date, but I think Commissioner O'Brien's idea of having a special meeting for this is a positive. This could be over quickly, or it could go on for a lengthy time. The emails that I've seen and stuff, they're planning on having a lot of people here, which would crowd out other people at the meeting for general business. So, and I'm looking like maybe that Monday or Thursday would work for me, but I don't know. I think we should have a special call meeting for it if, in fact, we...
Monday is Labor Day, so that would be out.
That'd be appropriate.
Sure, yeah.
What does our budget hearing take?
On the 16th, we got the 11th and 16th. Is that the 2 dates that stick out in my mind for our budget?
The 11th.
It's not budget.
501.
Yeah, it would be the...
I think I don't have a calendar in front of me at the left. It's the 15th, I thought the budget was.
Wednesday is the 16th.
It is a Wednesday.
Ninth and
It is a
16th.
Wednesday. You are
Ninth and
correct.
16th.
The 9th and
And how
16th.
long does that last?
Half an hour.
Quite frankly, it depends.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, not very long most of the time, but about the time I say that, it'll go to 3 o'clock a.m.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'm looking at my calendar, but I'd like to make a motion that we have a special call meeting at whatever time you'd like, morning, afternoon, or evening. Preferred to do it during the day, but on Thursday, September 10th.
I don't have my calendar in front of me, Commissioner. I wish I could support that without...
You want to use mine?
I like the idea of trying to schedule a separate time. We have a meeting on the 1st and the one on the 7th, is that correct?
We do not meet on the first.
We do not meet on the 1st, or the 8th, so we don't meet on the 1st.
That's correct.
But the 7th is Labor Day?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
Could we,
If you want to do that in a motion, Commissioner, I've lost votes before, but...
okay, let me ask, how about if I make a motion to hold a special call meeting, and then somebody can poll us and find out a date that works for everybody?
I'll second that.
Okay. We've got a motion to have this as a special call meeting at a time to be determined whenever we can coordinate calendars. And then upon us agreeing at that time, we'll forward that to the PBA and the sheriff. Okay? All right. We've got a motion from Commissioner Wheeler and a second from Commissioner O'Brien. Yes, there's no further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Okay. Does, just on what Marion Fellows said, does anybody have any comments or any questions?
Well, yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Wheeler suggested that perhaps the sheriff go back and negotiate, and perhaps the union can negotiate, and that's something that I encouraged in several talks with the sheriff. Well, Marion, is that an option for the sheriff at this point regarding the statement you've made with the statute?
Yes, the parties at impasse are free during this insulated period to continue to have discussions.
Okay.
At any time?
Yes.
Well, then I continue to encourage the sheriff and the men and women who serve to perhaps take time for pause and discuss this openly until the date that's set for the special call meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioners. Any other discussion? Anyone else? We're going to move forward then? Okay. Thank you very much. Next, we have under public hearing items, which is the Indian River County request to abandon the segment of 86th Street between 510 and 74th Avenue and a segment of 46th Avenue between 86th Place and County Road 510 in Wabasso. Mr. Keating, welcome.
Mr. Chairman, did you skip an item?
Did I? Oh, Mr. Byrd, yes, I did. We'll start the other one. Thank you. Sorry about that, Mr. Byrd. Didn't mean to overlook you out there.
Good morning. I'm Bob Keating. I'm County Community Development Director. This is a pretty simple rezoning request today. The proposal is to change the zoning on a piece of property from light industrial to general commercial. This slide shows the property. It consists of 2 lots, a total of about 1.7 acres. It's on the north side of 57th Street, and the property extends from U.S. Highway 1 to Old Dixie. And the purpose of this zoning is to get a zoning district that allows the uses in the general commercial zoning district, and those are primarily retail types of uses. The Planning and Zoning Commission did consider this proposed rezoning, and they voted unanimously to recommend that you approve the rezoning. This slide shows that the subject property and the properties pretty much surrounding it are all designated commercial industrial on the comp plan. There is some residential property to the northeast of the subject property, and that's on the east side of US 1. For this rezoning, like all rezonings, we looked at several criteria. We looked at concurrency, comp plan consistency, environmental impact, and land use compatibility. From a concurrency standpoint, there is sufficient capacity on the roadways and in all the concurrency systems to accommodate the proposed rezoning. This rezoning is consistent with the comp plan. It's in an area designated commercial industrial on the comp plan, which allows both the light industrial and the general commercial zoning districts. It's in the urban service area, and it's consistent with all the policies in the comp plan. The site is an altered site. There's a vacant single-family house on there right now, so there, in essence, won't be any environmental impacts when the site is developed with general commercial types of uses. From a compatibility standpoint, we feel that this is compatible. And these types of properties that are on US 1 and extend to Old Dixie are appropriate for several different types of zoning. Because of the volume of traffic on US 1 and the location, they're good retail sites that are consistent with the general commercial district, but also being adjacent to Old Dixie and the railroad, they also have characteristics that warrant a heavy commercial or a light industrial district. Staff feels in this case that the CG district is appropriate and it will be compatible with the surrounding areas. So in conclusion, staff found that the proposed rezoning is compatible with the area, it's consistent with the comp plan, it meets the concurrency requirement, there won't be any adverse environmental impacts. So both staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend that you approve this rezoning.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioners, are there any questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Bob, when you guys looked at the traffic counts, because it's a pretty significant jump going from 243 daily trips to 1,648, when you did the traffic study, did you factor in the settlement we have coming up with the VASTA and loading those trips onto our US 1 concurrency?
Yes, we looked at that, and there is capacity.
Okay, so even after these trips are loaded, there's still plenty of capacity for other projects to move forward? And
Yes.
okay, thank you. That's all I have, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
Any other questions, Commissioners? Okay. All right, at this time, if there's no further questions, we will close this, our portion, and open the public hearing. Does anybody from the public wish to address this issue regarding the rezoning of Richard Bird's request of 1.70 acres from industrial light to commercial general? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Okay, Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Move staff recommendation.
Thank you, Commissioner. Got a motion to approve staff recommendation from Commissioner O'Brien with a second from Commissioner Slurry. And no discussion. We'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Next, Mr. Keating.
Good morning. I'm Stan Bowling, County Planning Director. This is Indian River County's request to abandon a segment of 86th Street between County Road 510 and 47th Avenue and a segment of 46th Avenue between 86th Place and County Road 510 in the Wabasso area. This first slide is an aerial of a portion of the Wabasso area that's in the northeast quadrant of the intersection of US 1. It's shown here on the left side of this graphic, and County Road 510 cuts an angle across this particular area. You can see from this aerial that there are a number of streets, local streets in this particular area. Most are unpaved, some are paved. The particular subjects of this right-of-way abandonment request is a portion of 86th Street that I'm showing with the cursor now. It's boxed in kind of orange color here, and then the other right-of-way segment, which is 46th Avenue running north and south. It's boxed in the orange here. Those are the two subject right-of-way segments that are proposed to be abandoned with easements retained across them. Again, from this particular area, you can see in general in the area there are other local roads and connections that go through this particular area. There is an existing dirt road that comes across east and west, or 86th Street is, but it forms an acute angle intersection here at County Road 510. There's no roadway within this smaller segment, a narrower segment of right-of-way for 46th. There is a ditch that's in that particular right-of-way. This is actually, this abandonment request is part of an agreement between the county and an owner of property, Kennedy Groves 510 LLC, which owns this kind of triangular-shaped block, and this triangular-shaped block here. So if this abandonment is approved, that will basically eliminate the rights-of-ways between their ownerships here. In return for the right-of-way abandonment, there's an agreement with the applicant to obtain right-of-way for the County Road 510 improvements, which are part of the US 1510 improvements. It involves right-of-way in this magenta area that I'm showing here with the cursor, as well as a temporary construction easement shown in green, a corner clip further to the east, as well as a drainage easement. So there is basically a trade-off type of situation. This is a closer look at these abandonment segments. You can see that a portion of the ownership site to the south of 86th is commercial limited. If abandoned, actually the zoning line does not change, and the zoning line goes along the center of this right-of-way segment. To the north is multifamily zoning, which allows multifamily and single family as well in this neighborhood back up to the north. For the segment of 46th Avenue that's the subject of the abandonment, there is, as I mentioned earlier, an existing drainage ditch in that area, and so what it's proposed is to retain a drainage easement across that entire 25-foot wide right-of-way segment. For the segment of 86th Street, there's a utility, a water line across the northern portion of this right-of-way, and so what's proposed is to abandon the right-of-way but retain a 25-foot wide utility easement along the north side that's shown in blue. And on the south side, there are existing utilities, and a 10-foot easement is proposed to be retained to allow for those functions to continue. This has been reviewed by utility providers as well as all county departments, and staff's recommendation is that the Board of County Commissioners abandon its rights to the subject rights-of-way, authorize the chairman to execute the abandonment resolution with the conditions that include reserving the easements and obtaining traffic engineering approval when 86th Street is physically closed. I'd be glad to try to answer any questions that you might have.
Stan, what is the plans for the road to the north side of the subject property where the drainage easement, yes, right there, where the corner clip's going to take place on Massey Road? We're going to leave that road open at the back, and can they get it right? Yes. Now go back to the west and see where the appears to be the drainage easement, or what's that hatched area right there?
This hatched area from the parcel map, I think that is an easement area, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't believe there are any plans certainly for a roadway going north and south in here.
No, I'm more concerned about having access from let's suppose, I don't know what it'll go in here, but the thoughts of having access off that back road, allowing for some connectivity, is that, are they allowed to do that?
Right, that's a good question. When this parcel is zoned multifamily, it will stay that way. They could have coordinated connection points to 510, but also to the local road 87th Street here as well.
Okay.
That'll be a site plan issue.
All right. Commissioners, any other questions?
Stan, I had a similar question on the subject parcels where the right-of-way is being abandoned. if they get developed as multifamily and commercial, will 47th Avenue be able to handle that coming into 510?
Well, I think what will happen in this particular area, there's kind of a coordinated connection here where the Bristol Bay connection point will be coming in here to County Road 510, and what we anticipate is that there'll actually be a coordinated point of access on the other side of 510 that could be lined up as a possibility. Because these are under the same ownership, we think that there can be a coordinated site planning looking at the access here. And the other thing that I do want to mention is even though the right-of-way is to be abandoned and easements are to be retained in this place, the places that I'd mentioned, during the site planning process, there could be a proposal to actually move those easements and shift around where drainage has to occur, where utilities are, so you can have fewer impediments, actually. But what we'll do is reserve the right, keep things as they are on the ground, and then that would allow a development process to shift where utilities and drainage is needed in the future. They'll be pretty flexible, I think, when they come in.
That makes me feel better, because looking at where that is, you're abandoning the right-of-way, but I'm not sure that that's very functional as far as a parcel of land, the way those easements sit.
And this is a process we've done in the past years where initially rights are retained, and that's a fail-safe guarantee for the county and for the public, and then alternative locations are chosen when a development project actually comes in.
Okay.
Any other questions, Commissioners? Okay, seeing none, we will close our portion and open up the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak? Yes, ma'am. Welcome, and please give your name and address for the record.
I'm Pat Mills. I live in Wabasso. I was born there, and I'm still there. And I live on 87th Street, 4655 87th Street. If you cut off that one road, there will only be 2 roads coming from the river. It'd be my street. It is so narrow until it drops on both sides, and the county won't even put me a yellow line down the middle so people know which side they've got to hang off. And on top of that, there's an area just north of 87th that's going to have about 90 houses when they start building again, and that's supposed to come out on 87th. And then you've got 510, and most of the cars that come from the river going north cut off onto my road, and if they see anything in the road, they actually speed up. And there's at least 2 or 3 blocks from the highway lined up trying to get onto the highway. They did away with our light up there, and it's very dangerous. And on top of that, the Wabasso School, their school bus comes out on that road, onto US 1, on the other side of the road. And 510, they're speeding up and down that road, and all the way from US 1 to the ocean is a double yellow line. And I've had multitude of cars go sailing by me, even on the bridge, and they don't get caught, of course. But it's just you need more roads instead of doing away with some.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Mills. Mr. Keating, can you go back to the picture, to the map, Ariel? Ms. Mills, where is your residence, or the roads that you were talking about? Are you talking about the one that goes in front of the Baptist Church to the east?
Yeah, that's 47th Avenue.
Okay. Now they're not closing that one, right?
No, 47th Avenue is 86 from 510 to 47th Avenue.
Okay. All right.
And from 47th Avenue west will be open, or 86 all the way from 47th will be open.
To US 1.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
But we have, the people just aren't very polite, and they get a few roads taken away from them, and it's not going to be safe at all. And there must be over 1,000 cars every afternoon, especially during northern season, that come across that road.
You cross 47th?
across 510.
Oh, yeah.
And on my road, too. There's not quite that many, but there's still a pile going.
Yeah, I'd just like to comment, Ms. Mills, I'd like to, I tried to call you back yesterday
Yes.
twice. Your line was busy.
I was calling my neighbors to tell them about this meeting.
And I was up there several months ago and met with you because of drainage problems that already occur. And hopefully, if something was done here, some of the drainage problems of the entire area might be able to be addressed. I don't know that at this point, but you do have a drainage problem.
I
and-
do. I didn't
Yeah.
used to until they got fancy with it up around Burger King and up in there.
Yeah.
And now, if it rains, I got water in my yard. I didn't have water.
Well, I think the lot next to you almost turns into a lake. But that being said, and I also want to make sure that you understood that I did try to go back with you
So
yesterday.
it must have been that much water in my yard
Yeah.
during the last Fay. And usually it rains and they've got a little bit of water, and by the time it stops raining, it's gone. But they were supposed to put a retention pond up there, and I haven't quite found it yet.
Well, I would hope that if whatever happens here when the site plan comes into development, that staff would be looking at the entire drainage problem for that small neighborhood, because they do have a problem there. I was up, I don't know how long ago, several months ago. In fact, I knocked on your door to talk to you about it.
Ever since they fixed highway up there, I've had trouble. And, I've lived here all my life. It kind of pains me to see the way things are going. But between 510 and 87th Street is so narrow, that's the only outlets there are going to be from the river.
Well, Stan or Bob, can y'all elaborate a little bit on the 510 project to, as far as, it appears to me, Ms. Mills, that if they do away with that portion of, and I may be wrong, of 86th Street, it appears that should reduce some traffic coming into your area from 510.
It'll just be more because everybody going north will hit my road.
I can, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, I kind of disagree. First, and I was going to wait until after the public hearing was over, but I'm going to be opposed to abandoning 86. The other section I don't have a problem with, but 86 I'm going to be opposed to. We've talked repeatedly over the years here, everybody touting how we need interconnectivity, and now we're damaging the interconnectivity in an existing neighborhood. There's also businesses on 510 that I'm sure some people use that road to get to those businesses. It's going to have limited access just off US 1, and I think we're taking, it's a small area in there, but there is interconnectivity. There's a grid system, and it runs from 510 to US 1, and I'm going to be opposed to abandoning that portion of the request.
Okay.
It's really changed because used to, when I was little, we could walk up to the highway, the 2-lane highway, and walk right down the middle of the road on the yellow line for 3 blocks and not have to get off because there's any cars coming. But it's not like that anymore.
No. I'm concerned about that acute angle in the future whenever that road gets wider, which is scheduled to do. That acute angle, I mean, I quite frequently get fuel right there at the Sidco and then go to the Wabasso boat ramp, and it is difficult to get from the Sidco out on the road to make a left-hand turn heading towards the Intercoastal Waterway. And I just don't see it getting any better. And being able to take any of these accesses and connecting them up with the existing Bristol Bay.
You've got the same angle in Bristol Bay?
No, they'll be able to, they'll have room right there to be able to.
What's this right here? What right away is that across the street, which makes that a 4-way intersection?
No, when you go up, it squares.
All right, if I could mention just a couple things here. This 46th Avenue that's shown here was abandoned. Kind of a similar situation on the south side of the road within the last couple of years, obtaining right-of-way from property owners here on the south side to improve this whole area. And because of the intersection, same situation down here on the south side of the road, 46th Avenue, this will be eliminated, but access, kind of coordinated access will be brought in back here on the south side through the Bristol Bay and brought in at a proper angle here and hopefully have a coordinated point of access.
Well, 46th Avenue has never been used, and the northern end of that has been acquired by my neighbor, Hanson. So it's only just where, in the very beginning to the south and just a few yards back, is the only piece of road there.
Let me ask, and somewhat, I'm not asking for this, but to be the devil's advocate, if the logic of abandoning 86, the East and West Street, because of the angle, then why not 85th, and why not the entrance to the Citgo station? They've all got the same type of intersection, and I think as the road is built, those intersections can be fixed where there's more of a right angle than a 45-degree angle, more of a 90-degree angle. And a 45 is not that bad, but you got the same thing down the street, just a little bit farther. And if you go up to 87th, you can see where they've fixed it up there at least.
Right,
But-
and just from planning's perspective, I think what makes sense, you do, what you have here is a grid that was set up and a road coming across at an angle, and you have some connections that just are not good from the angle, and we've already kind of talked about that. 47th has a lot more potential for moving traffic through this local area because, it comes north and south and comes down into this particular intersection here. As was mentioned earlier, if you travel and you have to make this movement going further to the east, the angle you have to look back at and such is pretty extreme. So I think in terms of the properties that are here now and need to be served, this connection point makes sense. You've got vacant properties right now that can be developed and coordinated, through the site planning process. I think we've got better prospects for that over on this side.
So I'm not sure I follow. My comment or question is you've got two other intersections into 510 with the same angle. What are you going to do about them?
Well, I think this angle here actually is somewhat turned to be a little more perpendicular.
Okay.
This particular little angle down here versus what you have here.
And
but again, I think the key is that these local roads for circulation here make sense. I think with the project that's coming up here along 510, there may be some changes to medians and so forth.
There won't be a curb cut there if you go across to the left from 80.
I think that also, I think when they build the road and do 510, they can fix that intersection on 86. Also, there's commercial. This is a back way into some of the commercial on US 1, which will take traffic off from 510. If people, let's say a grocery store, a service type store comes in and people are coming over from the beach to go there, they could go in that way and have access to that business just as they do to the Citgo station without going through the intersection of 510 and US 1. And I think by closing these streets, it not only is a detriment to the neighborhood, I also think that potential business, and also it's going to add more traffic to that intersection of 510 and US 1.
Jim, do you have something you want to add?
Yes, sir. Jim Davis, Public Works Director. As a part of the County Road 510 four-laning project from County Road 512 all the way to east of US 1, we're looking at the access management for the corridor, and we do feel that we want to attract left turn movements to the 510 US 1 intersection, which will be signalized. And we want to discourage turn movements at 85th Place and 86th Street, only because the median openings there will probably be restricted on US 1 as we add lanes to the US 1 intersection and to the 510 intersection. So we really don't want to attract traffic turning on US 1 at those locations, particularly left turns. And the acute angles do create safety problems.
One of the problems that I have as a layperson, we tend to be building these roads in 4 lanes and 5 lanes to move a lot of traffic, and we forget about the neighborhoods we're going through and the neighborhoods that use those roads. And it's kind of like, to really exaggerate, but putting a high-speed rail through different neighborhoods and stuff. And I think intersections and stuff like that, particularly in residential and commercial areas, help slow down and calm traffic, and they stop. And I believe in interconnectivity, and we're eliminating some interconnectivity. So with that being said, I'm just going to reiterate that I will not support the second part of that, and I think that intersection can be improved when we do 510. I think when engineering looks at this, I think the perception is more about how to move traffic and get things done, and not as much thought given to the effect of the surrounding areas.
When they put in US 1, the new US 1, for some reason they put every one of those on a curve. So when you pull up there, you can't see far enough away to see if you're safely coming out. Especially the way those people sail up and down it.
And that's my concern on 510, right there at this very road that we're talking about.
And 87th Street, I've almost been run over there quite a few times.
There's just not enough room on that road at all. Yeah.
And we did have a light there until they took it down, and even with the light, it was a little bit dangerous.
Yes, ma'am.
That's where Mr. Michael and Mr. Powers and a bunch of our real fine old men got killed there.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
It seems like the problem isn't really 86th Street, but 87th Street and the speed you can go along 87th Street. So I'd ask Jim, is there anything that can be done to make 87th Street a little more friendly for the neighborhood?
There is, and when development does occur along 87th, the developer will be required to widen the road. I think the problem now is the width of the road is not the standard 22, 24-foot wide two-lane road, but any developer that will develop along the frontage would have to widen the road. And we can carry that widening on once we have activity there. I really honestly don't think at this point in time we've got a problem, but as it continues to develop, the road needs to be a standard 22 to 24 foot wide.
If we just had a yellow line down the middle of it, it'd be nice. At least they'd know to get over a little bit, but now most of them won't be half in the middle.
Is there any reason why we couldn't put a yellow line there in the near future?
you'd have 6 foot on one side and 6 foot on the other.
It's too narrow.
There's no reason why we can't, but we don't do a lot of striping on local roads. We try to save our striping money for the arterials and collectors.
Is there enough? Is the road wide enough to divide in half? If it is, I think it'd be money well spent to a little bit of paint down the middle of the road. It would be very appropriate right there if there's enough room.
I think it's 16 to 18 foot wide, so it'll be 8
It's very narrow.
foot lane.
It is very narrow. That's why I'm asking. Some roads, I mean, like for example, Old Dixie, near the Ocean Concrete plant up there, that road's just simply not wide enough to divide in half. It's a one-lane road that carries 2 lanes of traffic, and I really believe that to be the case here. But in the event that it is wide enough for us to be able to put a yellow line down the half and have traffic to drive safely, Ms. Mills brings up a very good point on that.
It would be appreciated.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Mills. Mr. Moore.
Yes, Chris Moore, Assistant Public Works Director. It's not wide enough to put a yellow line down the middle because if you do it, you'd be encouraging a less than legal width for each of those lanes. It's almost encouraging people to straddle the center of the road because it's so narrow.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we can do just to slow things down a little bit? Because the point is, a lot of people who are going north are going to take that cut and probably go a little faster than they should through a local neighborhood. So the issue really is, I think, can anything be done to just slow things down and to make it more like a neighborhood road as opposed to a...
We can take a look at that and look at some traffic calming features, perhaps get some selective enforcement from the sheriff's office. There are measures we can take.
How about some signage, like 25-mile-an-hour speed limit or something of that nature?
We can look at some reduced speeds in there, speed limits also, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Stan, can you throw the overhead back up, please? When we talk about the acute angles there on 86th Street and 85th Place, it is an acute angle if you're turning to go eastbound. But the westbound traffic that's coming, it's actually a very easy veer to the right for those people that are westbound on 510 and then want to go north on US 1. You know, at 86th Street, that's just a very easy right-hand off-ramp and same at 85th Place. It's when you're coming back and wanting to turn left on 510, that's the bad angle, because then you've got a bad angle and you're crossing the westbound traffic. And I think the normal person is going to use either 87th or 86 when they're coming westbound and when they go north, but they realize those are tough left-hand turns, like you mentioned, coming out of the Citgo, so they would probably come down to the light and have a signalized turn lane to get back on 510 going back east.
You lost me with that last, do that again, just the
Okay,
last part.
let's just start going westbound on 510, and they're going to go north on US 1. 87th Street is a good shortcut. 86th Street is a good shortcut to get to US 1 and then turn right going north. Okay, now coming back south when they're coming home, if you come 87th Street, that's where, or 86th Street, that's where you have a tough left-hand turn to go back eastbound because you have a bad angle and you're going across traffic. So you would know, what I do is I come all the way down to the light at 510 and turn left in the turn lane, in the turn signal, and go eastbound on 510 because those are such bad intersections to come out of. And I think what Mrs. Moore's point is, if you close off 86, then some of that westbound traffic is now, and staff does say it's a well-used dirt road in the backup, all that traffic is now going to be going down 87th for the shortcut. So I would think we want to keep 86th Street open, but if we're really worried about that acute angle, maybe we should just make that one-way westbound, and then they have to come down to the 510 signal to turn left to go eastbound.
I follow the logic to a certain extent, but whenever you get to the point where you're creating a one-way street in that area, it reminds me of the Vero Highlands down there south of 17th Lane, down there on the west side of Vero Highlands. Those one-way streets in Sebastian, I've seen them, and they just seem to never go away, and they really are what I'd call one-way streets unsafe in a neighborhood like that.
You know, I would say it's probably a temporary solution until we fix 87th Street, but I think closing 86th Street off without a better plan for 87th Street will make 87th a lot more dangerous.
Why not just put a no left turn sign at that intersection?
You could do that. One of those two, I think, but
Got over by the hospital, seems to work most of the time.
And of course, that's a perpendicular angle, not an acute angle. And I'm not sure of the placement of the sign. I mean, if you just look at that, when you're looking at traffic and whether or not you have a sign up there to see, I don't know that that would necessarily be in your sight of vision.
How about they can figure it out?
If they're going to see it.
I just think if we close 86th Street off, 87th is going to take a lot more traffic and be a lot more dangerous, and we don't have a plan to fix 87th Street yet.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying eventually we can abandon 86th Street. You know, if the property owners come forward with a site plan and we can figure out a better traffic plan, I'd be more than willing to look at it again then. But, you know, I agree with Commissioner Wheeler. If we abandon that now, we're going to be forcing more traffic on 87th Street, and that's a bad, narrow road.
Okay. Yes, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
My name is Ken Kennedy, 1 Sailfish Road, Vero Beach. Just want to mention a couple things about what's been discussed here about 86th Street. Number one, it is a bad angle. Number two, from my understanding in the engineering plan for the widening of 510, that street is going to be cut off. There are no plans in the engineering plan right now, from my understanding, Mr. Davis, is that not correct? That street is going to be cut off.
That's correct. The Florida DOT controls County Road, State Road 510 now. You know, we transferred that road to the state. In our communication with the state, you know, they have an access management legislation that they apply to all state roads. Their opinion is that acute angle is not a safe. The fact that it's a dirt road now, there's very little traffic on that road. I'm there quite a bit.
Backup says it's well used. I mean, that's in the backup.
In my opinion, there's very, very small volumes that use that dirt road. And we just think that once all the 510 and US 1 projects put together, we will be channelizing the turn movements to safe locations to take advantage of the signals, take advantage of median openings, and if we don't manage that correctly, we're going to have an unsafe road, and DOT will not permit it. So we've worked extensively with DOT on our plan. Our consultants, McMahon and Associates, have met with them several times, and they feel that 86 should be eliminated.
When's the timeline to do the 510 improvements? And can't we abandon 86th Street when that construction begins? I mean, again, we don't have a plan for 87th Street, so how are we going to handle this? I mean, we can't just block off a road and send everybody onto what Chris Moore said is a too narrow road. I mean, what's our plan?
We do think 85th Place will probably take the traffic that 86th Street is taking.
Okay.
And 85th Place is a more commercial-oriented road. 86 is a residential road. If you look at the land use, particularly to the south, you got the church to the north, but to the south, you still have residential land uses in there. And to exacerbate that situation, if I lived on 86th Street, that would not make me happy.
Well, I think 86th Street isn't accessing residential. It's a shortcut to US 1. It would be my guess is the primary
So
use
it's
there.
85th Place and 87th Street.
Right, so if we cut off 86th Street, where's all that shortcut traffic going to go? Probably they're going to go to 87th Street if they're looking to go northbound. Why would you keep going further south to go north?
The Commissioner, the main reason why most people don't use 86th Street is because there's a stop sign right there at the western part of where we're proposing abandoning the property. There's not a stop sign once you get on 87th Street and take that all the way to US 1. There's not a stop sign at 85th Street where you come in. And of course, there's a stop light up at 510 in that intersection. So having traveled this and living up in this area, I understand your concerns, but in the traffic flow and the patterns up there, it doesn't necessarily work the way you're talking about it working, in my experience.
Also, I might add that the street, whichever one that is, between us and the Sitco station, already now comes out at a perpendicular angle to 510, and does not need any further work to make it a safer intersection by being perpendicular. And to me, that street there could handle everything that the road 86 that we would like abandoned can handle. One further point of this whole thing is that the drainage easement that the county is getting on the east side of the property will go a long way to handling any of the drainage issues that Mrs. Mills or any of the other property owners have along that area.
How big of a piece of property is that drainage easement, just acreage-wise, in general? Anybody know? Is it?
I'm not positive, but it's over half an acre, I believe.
Okay. And we're getting that in exchange for this? Or we haven't? Okay. All right. Any other questions, Commissioners?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Wheeler?
I'd just like to go back, because we're going back and forth on this, but, it's illogical to me that we can fix the angle on 85th and not on 86 when we build the road. Also, DOT probably has been working with our staff and also looking at these future plans and building this into the project of not using 86. That's an assumption on my part, probably accurate. And 85th is just as bad. Now, we've got a less of an angle problem there, but when we build 510, we get a less of an angle problem there. I also think that we've disagreed with DOT. They're willing to work with us. They do it frequently.
Like the last resolution?
Huh?
Like the last resolution?
Yeah, didn't it? That was a little late in the game, but at any rate, we have worked and cooperated with them, and they have with us, and we fixed a lot of problems. And this is a local community, and it does add more traffic to 87th. And the most important thing here, we keep building these roads, and in the past when we had wild development, a lot of development going on, we constantly, even though this commission has officially given staff marching orders that we want interconnectivity, we fill these chambers up with people, and they come in here and they don't want anybody going through their neighborhoods, so we eliminate more and more interconnectivity. And the interconnectivity is very important, and I don't think we should be giving up interconnectivity to move more traffic faster, any more than we should be giving up any rights that we have with crossings with the railroad. As we grow, we need this interconnectivity, and I just think it's a bad plan to close that.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you. Anybody else from the public wish to speak on this? Mr. Wells, welcome. Name and address for the record, please.
William Wells, 8800 44th Avenue. Now, I was under the impression, because Phase 2 now is behind, but originally June 15th, 87th Avenue was going to be shut down, and you were only going to be able to go right and make a turnaround and come back to the light to go across the bridge.
Are they? Are they going to close down Massey Road?
That was the original plan. Has that changed now? Because 87th Avenue is suicide for me.
Yeah.
Because I ride the bike up and down the street.
There is no short-term plan to close 87th Street or to restrict turning movements right there at Massey Road. There has been some overall planning of this area to look at moving that connection more or less to align with the connection to Bristol Bay, and that perhaps would be signalized because of the distance from US 1 would accommodate a signal that far east, and we are kind of looking at that situation. Right now, when you're coming off that bridge corridor with the barrier rails on the bridge, the Massey Road 44th Avenue location's not the greatest. We feel something between US 1 and the bridge might be safer. So we're looking at those avenues, but we honestly do not feel 86th Street will be a safe connection to 510.
I don't understand how you can say 86 won't be a safe connection and you turn right around and say 85th will. It doesn't make sense to me. That's even closer to the 510 US 1 intersection. I would think if you were looking at strictly safety, that would be the one to close, not the other one. I'm not suggesting that. But, you know.
Well, we will not have a median opening at 85th Place.
The difference is this land's up for development, and the other difference is that's a commercial piece down there, which gives you more access to it, which I agree with. But if you start talking safety, let's be consistent. 87th Street's unsafe, so is 85th.
At 85th Place, we are looking at a median there, and will there not be a full-blown median opening there? You will not be able to turn left going eastbound on 510 at 85th Place, nor at 86th Street.
We could do that on 86?
Well, I see, looking at 86 though, I see a big difference in the safety issue there.
Explain it to me, will you?
Okay. If you're driving eastbound on 87th and you're trying to go to the east on 510.
87th you're talking about, or 85th and 86th?
86th and 85th.
Okay.
At 85th, you have a perpendicular angle, albeit small, but it is a perpendicular angle to County Road 510. Right? At 86th, you have a tremendous looking back over your shoulder at the same time, back to the west, then at the same time trying to look back to the east and trying to pull out on that road. That is dangerous. And I think that's what staff is trying to say.
What's different with 85th, except right now they've cut a little...
It's perpendicular. If you look where it says 85th Place, that is in fact right over the top of it.
I know that, Mr. Chairman, but the bottom line is when they build this road, they can fix that intersection along with what they did at 85th. And I'm simply saying, you know, the inconsistency here in saying that 86 is unsafe and 85th doesn't float. You can fix that intersection, you can put that turn in, and you can make that, and you can keep that interconnectivity just as you did down at 85th. And if you're going to put a medium strip in when you're building it where they can't cross and do a left-hand turn, fine, put it at 86 also, or put a no left turn up.
How do you submit to fixing 86th?
The same what you're talking about with 85th. You can take that intersection and turn it where you can have traffic coming off 510 westbound, and if you go eastbound on that, have a no left turn there. If they're going to put a medium strip in that I believe Mr. Davis just mentioned, where you couldn't go left off 85th, they could do the same thing at 86. And you don't have to one-way the street. You're simply saying that you can't make a left-hand turn. And my argument is, be consistent. If you're saying 85th is safe and 86 isn't, I don't buy it. They're both 45-degree intersections.
No, they're not.
And you can fix them when we build the road, because 85th has been
45-degree angles.
the problem. Yeah, they are.
No, sir.
They're very different.
I mean,
I don't know.
The
I knew my angles.
85th underneath that, it doesn't do it justice for as far as what you're looking at all. I mean, if that were removed, you could see that is just about a perpendicular angle to.
And they've made that intersection that way.
No, they made it because the north-south road of that is further over, and then you have where 85th Place actually comes in, well, I guess, yeah, they made it, obviously, it's a road.
And I'll bet
They didn't-
I wouldn't be surprised if that cut came in and made it more of a 90-degree angle when they built the Citgo station. I don't know, that's a guess, but it makes sense to me that that's probably when that was fixed, and we can fix the other one too. So I just disagree. We need the interconnectivity, and that intersection, we're going to be rebuilding 510, those problems can be solved.
Okay. Any other questions any other comments from the public? Mr. Bruce, welcome. Name and address for the record, please.
Bob Bruce, 12396 North Avon Lane. That 87th Street intersection is really a death trap. I agree with the former speaker. Something needs to be done there, especially when people come from Sebastian and go left there. It's very bad.
Yeah.
You could have no left turns out of all three of those intersections.
Well, I think that would force more traffic onto County Road 510 and doing more of what you're talking about you don't want to have done. If you don't make any left turns coming out on 510. Because I know personally, I do travel 87th to get on 510 to go over to the beaches and the river.
Sure.
Do that all the time. Okay. Any other comments from the public? Okay. All right. We'll close the public hearing.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I'll move that we don't abandon the portion on 86th Street and the other piece to abandon.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. We got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I still had an additional question for Mr. Davis. I wanted to know what the results for the traffic study was on 86th. Do we have proper traffic counts to determine whether we should be ceasing vehicular flow on that roadway?
No, we don't have any traffic counts for 86. It's a dirt road, and we don't normally count them. 86th Street. Is that the one you asked?
We don't normally perform traffic counts on dirt roads.
That's correct.
So we wouldn't do a traffic count on 85th, 86th, or...
85th is paved.
85th is paved.
I doubt that traffic counts are
do we have any traffic counts for 85th?
Not on 87th or 85th. Those are paved, but they're local roads, and we only count the collectors and arterials.
And how are the traffic counts on 87th to 510?
We don't have traffic counts on local roads. 87th is a local road.
Well, we have all this commercial traffic here in this hub on Old Dixie and 510, and we have a house of worship just one block away, and all these residents, and we haven't done any traffic count to at least make a prudent decision on where the vehicles will be flowing other than observation?
That's correct. We don't count local roads.
Okay.
Yeah, we have done extensive reconnaissance in the area. We're up there a lot. We just don't see a lot of traffic on 86. I personally go up here quite a bit, going over to the Causeway, going over to Wabasa Beach Park when we were building it. And I can tell you there's very, very little traffic on 86th Street. There is more on 85th Place because it's the back door to the Citgo station, and you have really the north-south road complementing that traffic. 86th Street, since 86th Avenue has never been built and is not even a dirt road, there's just very little demand to use 86th Street. The church itself, on Sunday morning, probably has 30, 40 cars there, but it's not a large church. It's more of a neighborhood community church. It's not like something you would see in Vero Beach with a large church. And, there's quite a few roads in this area. The interconnectivity is really not an issue when you have that much of a density of roads. It is if you have very few roads in an area, but there's quite a bit of opportunity between 87th Street and 510 with 85th Place, 87th, 510. That's all in the radius of about a quarter of a mile. So there is, if you do elect to abandon 86th Street between 86th Avenue and 87th Avenue, you will still have interconnectivity to complement that area.
I just think that the determination is made upon rough judgment as opposed to true traffic counts. That we've heard the discussion on what can be done for 87th and what other alternatives there are. I do disagree with the consistency of angles, that the roadway does appear to be a little more navigatable on 85th, but nonetheless, without traffic counts, I don't know how we can determine which road is more utilized than the other than the amount of times we grade it and the rutting, and I don't know how much reconnaissance can be spent upon the roadway other than traffic counts. And I realize that we don't normally, I've been told that we don't normally perform traffic counts on dirt roads, but I don't think that their existence is any less important than a paved road if it is used, and we don't have those numbers to work with to see if it is a used roadway, and I can't see eliminating access to the commercial and the house of worship, and I don't believe that the members of that congregation are limited to those 4 blocks. So that has to be a little higher used roadway than we're suggesting. I did have the opportunity to work in that area in my former occupation, and on a weekend that is a well-used roadway. So I would feel more comfortable and confident to go forward with closure if we had some statistics. Barring those statistics, I see no reason to do that.
Commissioner Solari?
I was just going to say that I agree pretty much with Mr. Davis on the interconnectivity issue. I don't think that there is a particular problem with interconnectivity in that neighborhood, and probably because of one of the reasons Commissioner O'Brien gives for keeping the road open, I'm going to go for closing it. I don't think a dirt road shortcut through to US 1 is a good thing through a neighborhood. So that to me is a much better argument for closing it. So for those reasons, I'm going to be voting against the present motion.
I'm going to vote against the motion. I'll tell you, aside from some of the other things that I've mentioned, we're getting about a half acre of drainage easement that we won't get. We're getting 10-foot temporary construction easement. We won't get the corner clip. We won't get the right-of-way dedication. In addition to that, we didn't have to pay any engineering or attorney's fees for this right-of-way. And in the long run, I understand exactly what Mr. Wells is saying, and as well as Mr. Bruce up there on 87th. We do need to move forward with the plan with that, and on that end, I do agree with some of the other commissioners up here. But looking at what we're getting for what we're giving up, to me, it's a pretty simple decision. I'm going to support staff's recommendation. Okay, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
I didn't hear you, Commissioner.
Motion passes.
The motion passes 3-2 with Commissioner Davis and Commissioner Solari dissenting. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the public hearing A3, which is Indian River County's request for abandonment of excess appendages of Old Dixie Highway right-of-way of land lying just north of 8th Street on the west side of Old Dixie Highway. Memorandum dated July 23, 2009, page 268 through 276 in your backup. Mr. Keating.
I'll handle this,
Ms.
Mr. Chairman,
Bowling?
if you don't mind. Stan
Okay.
Bowling, Planning Director. This is a request to abandon a short piece of property. It's a little bit less than 4 feet wide and it's 32 feet long and comes off at an angle from Old Dixie Highway. It's located off of Old Dixie Highway just north of 8th Street in the South County area. This particular, we're calling it an appendage, does not actually run along the Old Dixie Highway corridor, but it is a right-of-way that the county has rights to and essentially owns right now. And this request is to abandon this short strip or appendage. It's essentially causing some problems for the owner of the property, It's commercially zoned property here at the northwest corner of Old Dixie and 8th Street. Because we have setbacks, front yard setbacks from rights-of-way, including this small piece of right-of-way, and it does kind of cut into the property itself and creates some conflicts with proposed development on the property. This sketch shows the right-of-way to be abandoned in blue. Again, it does not function as part of Old Dixie Highway, or it doesn't even contribute to the corridor itself. The development plans for this parcel include accommodating selling off right-of-way to the county that's shown here in orange around this corner, which will help improvement at Old Dixie and 8th Street. And it does include also from the applicant contribution of a sidewalk easement that will help with sidewalk facility here at this particular corner. So again, the abandonment proposed is this small strip. Staff and utility providers have looked at this, and we see no function or purpose, will not affect the function or plans for Old Dixie Highway, will accommodate reasonable development of the property that it's over, and will allow this acquisition and sidewalk easement contribution to move forward. Again, nothing exists within this particular right-of-way. You can see from this aerial, there's no roadway or existing facilities in that particular area. And staff's recommendation is that the board abandon its rights to the subject right-of-way and authorize the chairman to execute a resolution of abandonment that's attached.
Any questions, Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Stan, any idea what the original need for that right-of-way was, or is there?
Staff research and did not find how that particular piece came to be. There's nothing on the ground out there, no plans, so it's still a mystery.
Okay. My second question is the agreement with SDGR for the right-of-way and the sidewalk easement. Is that contract been signed and part of this, or are we giving up the easement first and that's not done yet?
I'm not sure. I can't. Perhaps someone from Public Works can talk about the contract, if there is a contract, to move forward on that.
Well, I guess I'd like to make sure that part is done and before we give up the easement, because then we don't have any bargaining chip.
I'm not from Public Works, but the agreement was signed a while back by both sides.
It is? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burkett.
I think it was going to be a rest area for Old Dixie.
Place where semis could cool their brakes going downhill. There you go.
Rest area.
All right. Any other questions or comments, Commissioners? Seeing none, we'll open this up to the public. Anybody from the public wish to address this? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Second.
Got a motion from Commissioner Wheeler with a second from Commissioner O'Brien to approve the right-of-way abandonment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next, we move on to the A10A4, which is the public hearing to amend portions of the code, Chapter 201, County Water and Sewer, and public hearing to amend portions of the utilities rate resolution, making conforming changes. Memorandum dated August 11th, 2009, pages 277 through 289 in your backup.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is the first of two public hearings under this item. We're presenting certain amendments to Chapter 201 of the Water and Sewer Code of Indian River County. The amendments will add provisions for the return of deposits to certain commercial accounts. It will delete the fire protection charge. It will clarify the application of deposits in certain landlord-tenant situations, and it changes the term capacity charge to the legal term of impact fee, and it changes the current term of base facility charge to the term service availability charge. Those two changes are consistent with current Florida law, and I want to point out that the rates are not changing. It is merely a nomenclature change. I ask that you open the public hearing, take public comment, close the public hearing, and adopt the ordinance as presented.
And then we'll do that again?
Yes, sir.
At a later
Then
date.
we'll have the second public hearing, yes.
Okay. All right, Commissioners, is there any questions before we open the public hearing? Any comments?
I'll just make one comment, and
Yes.
I say this is going in the right direction. I think it helps us fulfill our fiduciary duty to the Emergency Services District, and I hope it's a 5-0 vote.
Well, what I like about it is I like the landlord-tenant responsibility with the, as it relates to deposits and, in fact, actually giving the deposits back to commercial facilities that are on time with their payments.
And in case anybody missed it, I'd like to follow up on what our attorney said. There are no rate increases in here.
Sounds great. All right. No further questions. We'll open this up for public comment. Anybody from the public wish to speak? Mr. Robinson, please give your name and address for the record.
Peter Robinson, 315 Great Twig. Does that mean we're going to change capacity charge back to impact fee? Is that what you said, to be in concurrence with Florida law?
Yes. It sounds as though you recall that back in the 90s, the ordinance did say impact fee,
Right.
and then it was changed to capacity charge, and we're changing the term to the proper name, which is really impact fee.
Okay,
Again,
so
the
we
fees are
won't-
not changing.
So actually, then our impact fees will all be going up because we'll now be like other counties in the state who have to show their water and sewer impact fees and everything when they talk about impact fees.
Sir, what I am saying is that we're using the term impact fee in Chapter 201 of the code. The impact fees are not changing in this public hearing or
Right.
pursuant to this
No, the capacity
ordinance.
charge. I'm just talking about terminology when we compare ourselves to other counties. That's been one of the tricks that we played in this county, is that we never talk about our capacity charges because it's not an impact fee. So I just wanted to get that clarified in my own mind, that is actually should have been an impact fee all along, if what you're telling me is right.
Yes, the term that is used in Florida law is impact fee.
Okay. Thank you.
But there are no rate changes associated with this public
Right, I
hearing.
recognize there's no
Okay,
rate
sorry.
changes,
Okay,
but
yes.
we always do comparisons to other counties as to what our impact fees are and what other people's impact fees are. And because we had a capacity charge for sewer and water, our impact fees were always helped because we didn't have to show that number. But now I understand.
When we filled out forms, I know that we always disclosed it like an impact fee in all the forms for the state. I know that I always, staff, when they sent it through, I always said, when it got to water and sewer, we included it on the impact fee form for the state. We always did, because actually an impact fee is a capacity charge anyway. It's for your share capacity. So we're
Right,
just
I know.
playing
Well, that's where
nomenclature.
but I mean, that's where the case came from. With St.
Yes.
Petersburg, it was a water and sewer case to begin with. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Peter. Any other questions from the public? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners?
Move approval.
Got a motion to approve from Commissioner Solari with a second from Commissioner Flesher. And if there's no further discussion, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. And that moves us to, and of course, that'll come back for another hearing, I'm assuming at the next meeting?
Can we take a break?
No, Commissioner, you just heard the public hearing, and these changes to the ordinance that you just voted on will be effective September 1st. The next public hearing is to change the rate resolution,
Gotcha.
and that's occurring now.
Clear. Thank you.
The item before you now is a public hearing to address the rate resolution.
Okay.
Two things are happening in the rate resolution. We're making the conforming nomenclature changes to service availability charge instead of base facility charge. And the other change we're making in here is to delete the fire protection charge.
Okay.
So I ask again that you open the public hearing, take public comment, close the public hearing, and adopt the rate resolution in the form presented.
Okay.
Again, no rates are changing in the rate resolution.
All right. All right. Commissioners, any questions before we open this up to, excuse me, to the public hearing? No? Okay. We'll open this up for the public hearing. This has to do with the rates, or the emergency services, basically what you talked about in the first half. I thought we really all covered it in one motion, but I'm assuming we can't do that?
That's correct.
Okay.
Two
all
hearings,
right.
two motions.
And if there's no further discussion for the public, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Now, what's your pleasure, Commissioners? Move staff recommendation from Commissioner Solari, I'll second. And if there's no further discussion, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The motion passes unanimously. Okay, at this time, I'll tell you what we'll do. Let's take a brief recess for about 10 minutes, and we'll reconvene at 10:30. are you gonna bait me on this one or what? Yeah, I heard that. I just wish we'd have known about the sheriff about 4 days in advance. You know, I'll tell you what is so awkward now is not having the communication. I mean, I don't know about y'all. Did y'all respond to the emails yet?
Sheriff?
Yeah.
No. I responded to a couple, not just one clarification, the guy said, is the public hearing going to speak?
Okay.
Back.
Yeah.
But that was the reason, or the baby.
Yeah, because I don't know. I have just the opposite problem. I want to put that in an email and then get $1 million on that.
Mike?
The problem is, I got a lot of friends that won't be pissed.
You got friends?
Alleged. Alleged friends.
Next to sandblock.
Meeting will come back to order. We left off under the public discussion items. We have item number 1, which is request to speak from Kenneth B. McKellar regarding 31st Avenue at 49th Street, .61 acres of land in Gifford, which one half is improved. Welcome, Mr. Block. Name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, I'm Sam Block, and I represent Ken McKellar, and he resides at 125 Ocean Way. I don't think you guys care where I reside, to tell you the truth. Morning, Commissioners. Just briefly, the property we're talking about, Ken owns the property. It's located, it's 1,000 feet north of 49th, which is, and starts at the Gifford Cemetery. It goes 1,000 feet. On the left hand, on the west side, it's the drainage district, and on the east side, it should be the county. But what happened is in 2005, the utility department, on behalf of the county, purchased 34 acres. I guess a year or so later, Ken still owns some property to the north of that. He was doing some work, had some title work done, and it turned out that the 13 feet of that property was inadvertently excluded from the purchase from the county. Also, there is a road there that is paved. I heard the small talking about the width of roads. It's 12 feet. It was built several years ago by John Troglin. I think the county might have put the asphalt in, but he built it, did the base, and so forth. It's 1,000 feet. When Ken heard about this, he went to the county. He talked with the utility director and several people there and said, look, this came up. There's 25 feet there that's in my name. What do we do about it? They discussed it. They negotiated it. This was June 08, important date. They negotiated it. They discussed it. And March of 09, Ken was given a contract prepared by the county attorney's office for $34,200 based on $45,000 an acre. It's 0.16 acres. That's what the county bought the property for, and per acre, the 34 acres that was immediately to the east. Y'all need the property because you can't get to the road. You don't have ingress and egress inadvertently. Ken had the contract signed. Within 30 days, I guess, he comes back and finds out from Mr. DeBrawls, who he was dealing with, says, oh, the county decided that we're going to take this under the maintenance map. There's not a maintenance map there now. We've maintained the road. He comes to me. He's upset. I asked the county attorney's office to provide me maintenance records. They did provide me maintenance records, and it's about this thick. And I'd like to give those to you, but I won't, because 95% of them deal with 31st Avenue through the county, not this 1,000 feet. There's maybe 5% of that report And no disrespect to anybody, it's just listed. This is what we do. Then, and I know that very early on, Mr. McKellar did talk, I think Mr. DeBall, it was in the hallway, and he said something about maybe a maintenance back in June of '08. Nothing was ever said, nothing was ever done. And Mr. McKellar says to me, he said, Sam, go out there and look at it. And I did go out, and I encourage you, I heard comments that you look at things here in the county and see it. Go look at that 1,000 feet. Probably most of the household goods in that area are along that road, laid out there. It's dense right to the roadway. So we do have some issues about the maintenance map, if that's in fact what the county's position is, that they're going to take this property based on a maintenance map, which is not there yet. I'm not even sure it's been surveyed or anything. And all we're asking is just be fair. This is now August '09. Tell the gentleman in the beginning, we're going to do a maintenance map, we're going to take your property, if it's proper under the statutes. Don't give him 15 months later and we're sitting here. Now we're asking today for the county, just for you as commissioners to understand what's happened and to look into a little further and just approve the contract for 34-2. I can tell you that the utility director at that time said it's in our budget. You know, it was part of the budget when we purchased in 2005. We just inadvertently didn't take this property. The county did some surveying, Mr. Keller did surveying, and those people there, and it was just left out. It was a mistake. You didn't pay for it, and you know, and that's what we're asking for. It's real simple. There are no roads there, and I'm going to tell you that 1,000 feet leads to 2 cement, a road builder, and one other back beyond that property. That's what's there. And that's dirt road after you get by that 1,000 feet of paved road. So that's our comments today, and we would surely like the commissioners to at least discuss it with the staff and see if we can come to some reasonable conclusion of this based on the length of time. Remembering, June '08, and we're now in August '09. Okay. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Yeah, I've talked with Mr. McKellar on 2 occasions. I've also talked with Mr. DeBrawl, and everything that Mr. McCullough told me was accurate based on my conversation with Mr. DeBrawl. And this even goes back a little farther on another piece of property on the southwest corner, negotiations and stuff that kind of changed in the middle. And he went along with the county and was working with them. This is an oversight. And the fact that we did give him a contract for him to approve and sign, and then when he brought it back, we kind of backed out of the deal. I'd like to make a motion that we buy that property for $34,200 or whatever the amount is. And I believe it's the right thing to do. I believe it's the fair thing to do. And I believe that Mr. Keller was, I don't think there was fair and objective negotiations on this after the fact.
I'll second that. Any other comments, commissioners?
Just for discussion, just as an item just a few weeks ago, I don't believe that the public discussion items is the place for us to be voting on different items. I believe we ought to be giving staff a chance to prepare their side of it. Everything Commissioner Wheeler says, don't take disagreement to any of it, but again, there's I think a process which we ought to be following. This isn't it, and for that reason, I'll be saying no.
But may I comment on that?
Absolutely, Commissioner.
You know, just like the item a few weeks ago, whenever it was, when Commissioner Solari said the same thing, it had been staffed, and there were many comments. I don't remember what the specific item was at this time, but there had been staffed. There had been a lot of staff time put into it, and there has been with this also. And, you know, I've come to the conclusion that staff has looked at it in depth. They're not getting caught blindsided or anything else. All of staff is fully aware of the circumstances here, as is Mr. Block and Mr. McCullough, and there's just a disagreement in this portion with both sides being knowledgeable of it, that, and I happen to agree with Mr. McCullough.
My take on it is this, is I feel like what's coming forth, this staff's going to come forth with option A and option B. Option A is to move forward with a maintenance map, or option B is to buy the property. And I know where I'm going to be in that instance, you know, 3 weeks down the road where I sit and where my feelings are on that. And that would clearly be option B, is to go ahead and buy the property. But that's just one vote. Yes, Mr. Zito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Michael Zito, Assistant County Administrator. If the board is so inclined to discuss it in its entirety today, there's an option C. To rewind a bit, in June of '08, that Mr. Block made reference to that date. In August of '08, I did meet with Mr. McKellar. In reviewing the contract, it was my concern
August of '08?
Yes, in other words, a couple of months after the commencement of this issue, I met with Mr. McKellar, and we discussed it at length. My concern was the price per acre that was established by the appraisal certainly it contemplated access. The intent and meeting of the minds of the parties certainly was to convey an accessible piece of property. In fact, the appraisal discusses access and takes it for granted. If we don't own the road, then we would have an access issue. So that was my concern at that time. I also raised some legal questions in August of '08 to the county attorney's office, including the due diligence and without becoming accusatory in any way. It was a question as to the professional responsibility as a broker and transaction to the party. I saw in the transactions there was an 8% commission paid to the broker who employs Mr. McKellar, who actually brought this deal together. There were several parcel owners that had to be coordinated and combined into a bulk sale. And I wanted to know if it was the intention to sell the county a complete parcel with access. Otherwise, it kind of frustrates the purpose of the contract. Additionally, I raised surveying and title examination errors and omissions in writing, construction and maintenance of the road, prescriptive easement by necessity, the road maintenance map statute and how it might apply, whether the developer originally dedicated the right-of-way through an unrecorded plat or was his intention to do so, how sort of Mr. McKellar obtained an undivided interest in a strip of roadway that runs along several different tracks of individual owners. So it just didn't make sense from that perspective. Also, isolating the road itself from the shoulder area. So that was in August of '08, and nothing much happened after that, but in March of '09, an agenda item did come forward, which we had hesitated to recommend to be presented to the county commission because none of these issues were resolved. But in May of '09, we had a meeting where we invited the professionals, including the original surveyor, Mr. Taylor. Of course, we invited Mr. McKellar to that meeting, but he was unavailable that day. So here's where we are. In an effort to compromise and settle what appeared to be a dispute over the value and ownership of the entire area, what we did was we carved out the price per acre that we paid for the land and applied it to the area of everything in dispute but the road, and came up with an offer that's about half of what Mr. McKellar had made demand for, because it excludes out the real estate under the asphalt, which we've maintained as a public thoroughfare for years. So that's where option C comes in, is we've offered to be consistent on the price per acre paid, which was based on a 2005 appraisal and was in excess of $1,350,000. We've applied that same price per acre and come up with an offer that pays for everything except the asphalt. So we're hoping that would be an acceptable solution in option C.
Okay. All right, commissioners, any questions?
Yeah, I think that a piece of parcel property that has access.
Okay. Go ahead.
Mr. Zito, you said that it excludes the existing asphalt?
That offer of compromise and settlement would exclude the asphalt.
And what's the dollar amount again?
On the compromised offer?
On the compromised offer?
That was forwarded through Mr. DeBraw's office in an email. I want to say approximately $16,000.
He's here. He's got it.
$16,065.
And the response?
I have not heard a response as of today.
No response.
There's been no response on that?
Which I take as refusal or denial.
Safe
Not
assumption.
happy with that.
Safe assumption. And how was that calculated again? That was calculated on the aggregate value from the original?
Took the area of the parcel that Mr. McKellar's brought to our attention as being under his ownership, and we calculated the price per acre, but excluded the actual the 12-foot of roadway.
And that's also less commission that was considered on the other parcels of property when they were obtained.
That is true. There would have been, had that been included in the original deal, the commission would have applied to that figure, yes.
So Mr. McCullough's not, I mean, he's being fairly compensated for his property without a commission and without the asphalt and that 12-foot.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Mr.
Commissioner? Yes.
Sorry, I'll wait.
You want to wait till, okay. Mr. Baird?
Yeah, I have a copy of the page of the appraisal on it. In the appraisal, it says that the property does have access. You pay a different price for a piece of property that has an access and doesn't.
Have access off 49th Street?
It says access to the project is from frontage along 31st Avenue. In the appraisal.
But is there not access off 49th also?
No, there is not.
Okay. All right.
And Mr. McKellar was a broker, was the realtor on it too, as well as an owner. So we would like to have that disclosed if there was an access.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah,
Can I see that?
I have a degree of frustration here because we've done this before. I'm going by memory. So we had a situation with the dog park off from 12th Street where we bought a piece of property and somehow we left a strip dividing the piece of property we bought to the north and 12th Street. And then we had to go back and get that piece of property. It was in front of this commission. We had to go back and get that piece of property. And the way we got that piece of property was basically kind of indicating to the dog park that things weren't moving very fast on their site plan because we didn't have that piece of property yet. And we've done that before. The other thing is we sent a contract, and there's errors here on both sides. There's no question about it. But my position is that we sent a contract for his approval. He approved it and brought it back, and then after the fact, we looked into it another time and tried to figure out another way to get that property without paying for it. And the frustrating thing that I find is with government at all levels, and you deal with them as a layperson or a citizen, there's no room for slop. It's trying to put something in your computer that the program won't take. And every I has to be dotted, every T has to be crossed. But we don't apply that same standard to ourselves. And if we did, and every I was dotted and every T was crossed, this mistake wouldn't have happened to begin with. And I don't think that we've dealt in good faith on this. And I do believe that we sent a contract for his approval, he approved it, and then we withdrew after the fact. And I just think that we are not dealing as fairly with the people as we expect the people to deal with us being part of government.
My thoughts, and Commissioner Wheeler, I agree with what you're saying, and my thoughts are simply this. In the event that we'd have known about this whenever we closed on the property, we'd have paid this for the property and moved on.
That's true.
It would not be an issue today. That's my thoughts on it. Any other comments?
I'd just like to say, I think the county, it was our intention that we thought we were buying this strip of parcel. So and I don't think it was Mr. McKellar's intent to keep this. From what Mr. Block said, he was selling the whole parcel. So when we negotiated that price, under an agreement, we thought we were getting the whole parcel, and Mr. McKellar was getting what he thought was a fair price for the entire parcel. And so both parties had an agreement, which the understanding was it was for the entire parcel. And so I think the compromise price is pretty fair, because we had an agreement to buy a property, the seller agreed to the price, it was a done deal, and then just because later we found out a slip was omitted, I think we had an agreement for the whole parcel, and I think the option C is a pretty fair.
I need to ask a question along those lines. In most acreage transactions, you agree on a price per unit, or the total price, however you want to look at it. And so either when they're in the survey or in the process of this, if we agreed upon a price per unit, price per foot, or per acre, however you want to do it, and he had a deed and there was a scrivener's errors of some kind in the deed and actually showed a less acreage than there was than originally thought, then just compensation should tell you that in the event there's more acreage than he thought, it's not that it should be a better deal for the county, it's more acreage than what he thought he had there, therefore he should be compensated by the county for the additional acreage that in fact showed on a deed that he had, or the survey revealed.
I think if you go and you buy a house and it says a lot plus or minus 0.67 acres, and you say, okay, I'm going to pay you $100,000 for the house, the lot, the whole 9 yards, then that was your agreement. And if it turns out it's .66 acres instead of .67, that you agreed to a price for the whole parcel, and you're not going to go back and argue over 5 feet. I mean, it's a lump sum price.
What's it with this contract? It's not clear. Did we...
Mr. Block?
And maybe, sir, I could clarify that. The 2005, that was based on per acre.
Thank you.
And it went out and was surveyed by the county surveyor. And by the way, what Mr. McKellar owned is a small part. There were maybe 10 owners in that area that owned those pieces. And it was done on a per unit purchase price. So consequently, that .6 acres was never included. And if it had been, we would have known it, then you guys would have paid it then, just like you would have done. It came out later because there were errors in the survey, not from Mr. McKellar's surveyor and the county surveyor. They got together and said, this is what it is. So it's not like in a house and you buy a lot. Whatever that lot is on those 4 corners, of course you pay for it. This was based on, and all those contracts, and you can go back and look at them, were based on a per unit, which is on an acre basis. So all we're saying is, fine, then go through and just pay the rest of it that should have been paid before. That's where it comes down to.
And that is the offer, to do just that, but not,
right, and
not to be
right, and that's where it
asphalt.
Okay, so does that clarify what you're asking? Is what was it? It was based on a per acre. Now we have in my opinion, the debate boils down is: do you want to take the property because there was asphalt on it and it actually showed that he owned it with a piece of property, or are we going to assume our rights as a government with the prescriptive easement? That's their maintenance easement. Yes.
And that's asphalt that the taxpayer has paid for. Is that correct?
Yes, it was repaved in 2001.
That's correct. It's been paid for and maintained by the
Taxpayer has already paid for that asphalt. We're not saying who...
I could correct that. Excuse me, sir.
Yes, sir.
That's not correct.
Okay.
Let's make sure we all understand. Mr. Troglin owned most of that property out there, and us that lived here a long, long time understood what Mr. Troglin had there. He needed a way to get to that road, to get through there to 49th, sir. Okay?
Okay.
The county wasn't going to do anything. He made a deal with the county and said, you put the asphalt up. I'll do the base. I'll take my machines. I will prepare the road, and then I will pour the asphalt. The county provided the asphalt. And if you look at a unit price, that's maybe 1/3 of the unit price per linear foot. So when everybody says, oh, we put the road in, the county provided the asphalt as a partner with John Troglin in the early 1990s.
And more importantly, he's not arguing about whether or not we're reimbursing him for asphalt. It's the dirt underneath it that we're talking about.
Well, but there was a letter that came from Mr. Duvall said, you taxpayers have already paid for that land. And there is an email that came to us that said you've already, and it's part of that proposal to us for 16-something. And by we're splitting hairs here, and we'd be glad to talk to you all about that. But I just want you all to understand the county has not paid for that entire road at 27. That's today's dollars. I don't know what it was in 1991. 92.
Okay.
But I'm just saying it was a partnership, sir, not that you did the road.
Thank you for that clarification. Mr. Chairman, Joe Baird was commenting on a document, and I've asked to have that sent down to me. This is a document from Boyle Drake and Incorporated, and who's that?
They're an appraiser.
Joe?
The appraiser.
Where did you get this document from?
Mike got out of the appraisal document.
I have the
And
copy
this
of the
was
appraisal.
during the original sale. Was this part of a package?
Yes, this was in support of the sale. Between
Support of the
county and
sale.
assembled owners.
And it says McKellar on the top in red pen. Does that mean that, did he supply this?
No, that's just an internal reference as to which
Internal
appraisal.
reference?
Yeah.
All right, so I'll ignore that. But it says site description, and I see highlighted the, if you permit me to read that into the record, access to the project is from the frontage along 31st Avenue. The subject site is approximately 1/2 mile west of US Highway 1 and just west of Old Dixie Highway. Overall access is considered good. Well, that's a judgment call, but the factual was in the first line that said access to the project is from the frontage along 31st Avenue. Without that parcel, there is no access to the property. Is that correct? Is that safe to assume?
Yes, sir.
Regardless of the condition, if there is road debris along the side, there is no access into that roadway on 37th Avenue to any of the parcels that the taxpayers have now paid for. Is that correct?
Not the access part of it.
So, I just think that there was oversight on both part, and maybe perhaps we did not catch that, maybe, and speaking to Mr. DeBrawl, who was working that out during the time, and I did question the secondary offer, if one was going to be made. I didn't agree that we should just take that piece of property at that point. I did not want to see Mr. McKellar suffer unduly. I don't believe that it was his intent. I have spoken to Mr. McKellar. I don't believe that it was his intent to have this as an oversight. I don't believe that the county was looking to wait until the opportunity where we can just throw a map over this and say, we're claiming this property. Thank you very much, Mr. McKellar. Not to split hairs, I do believe that from what I've been told is the most appropriate course for Mr. McKellar and for the taxpayers and for staff, after having this additional information, is that option C is the most likely that would serve everyone well in the process.
Commissioners, the way I see this in my mind, so I can get it out, I suppose, is simply this, is we agreed upon a price on a per unit basis. After doing the closing of the property, we understand that the per unit basis did not, or the price didn't change, but the per unit, or the units, the amount, the volume of land there had changed. Now we're philosophically discussing whether or not we're going to use the maintenance map here to take this piece of property. To me, that's wrong in this instance. It's something that we would have paid had this come up in the original negotiations, and we know then what we know now. I do not believe that this would have been any issue, and we'd have still paid this amount for the property. And as far as the appraisal with that frontage and the access and everything, yes, it is, that property did have access from the road that's on the western boundary of this piece of property. That still hasn't changed. What we have realized is whenever we compensated the property owner for this piece of land, we simply left off a strip of it that's about 14 feet wide and 1,000 feet long.
And I think both parties have done that, both the county and Mr. McKellar as well.
Right.
I think it's time for room for compromise and understanding and interpretation so we can go forward. After all, there's a lot of property that the taxpayer has already purchased with the understanding that we would have access, unfettered access, which is not the case. Again, I believe that this was an oversight on both ends. Both parties would most certainly not have intended this to happen. I should hope not. But in the spirit of moving this in the right direction, again, I would have to support option C, which is to fairly compensate Mr. McKellar for the property less the roadway.
And I guess really the compromise here is simply, he's saying here, this is the original purchase price, we'll move forward. Listen, other than that, you know what, my 1,000 feet's not for sale. Now that would put us in a difficult situation. I don't think that's prudent for anybody to move forward with. Commissioner Wheeler?
Two questions. One, and I'm not sure, but if I'm going out and I'm negotiating with someone and they give me a contract with an offer, when I sign that contract and take it back to them, I would think that would be a binding contract. Now, second question is, what would it cost to take this property legally?
The other half.
And I agree with everything you said, Mr. Chairman, and I think the county has not been dealing in good faith with this. I think we're looking out too much for government that's structured and not enough for the people that we represent.
Mr. Chairman.
I want to address the contract issue.
As far as the contract issue, Commissioner Wheeler, any contract that staff forwards to any property owner has to be approved by the Board of County Commissioners. So any contract that we bring forward, the property owner always runs the risk of the board denying it.
Well, then I'd make a motion that we approve the contract.
I'll second that one.
Well, I think you need to have it in front of you. I don't think legally, so we'll bring it back. Well, if you do, why don't you bring it back? I don't think you should start approving contracts that you don't have in front of you in writing. And I think legal will agree there.
Well,
But
as
we can
long
bring
as
it
we
back.
move this off center, I think this is getting absurd.
Mr. Chairman, isn't there already a motion on the
Yes, there
floor,
is.
so we can't layer it with an additional motion?
No, we go by chairman's discretion.
You're good.
Yes. I never thought I'd be happy to say that one. Yes, Mr. Robinson, welcome.
I'm Peter Robinson with Laurel Homes. We're, landowners in this county. And I think, one thing my dad always taught me is that when you deal in land, you better deal fairly with everybody, because if you screw a guy once, he'll screw you the next time.
That's right.
And my dad used to say, he'll own the sinkhole that you want to drain into next time. And if you can't drain into a sinkhole, then you can't build a road, or you can't do what you want to do. And I think Gary and Wesley are hitting it on the nose. They're trying to deal fairly with a landowner. And as another landowner, if I sit here and listen to you guys sit here the way, you say, well, we're not going to go by this contract, we're going to change this, then we don't want to deal with you. And then you're making your life harder down the road. And just as he said, for $34,000 or $16,000, this is the problem with staff. Staff loves to cut deals. They love to slice it, and they're always saying, we represent the people of Indian River County, and we're trying to protect them and save all this money. Well, a lot of times they're not saving money, they're costing money. And I think this is an example of costing money. And I think that the fact that Gary and Wesley have taken this stand, they're recognizing a better value for this county than for you guys to slice and dice and keep slicing and dicing. And you're going to have a lot of very unhappy landowners down the road that you're going to have to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Any other questions? Any other comments? All right, we do have a motion on the floor, Commissioner, and that was to move forward with to bring the contract back, or there is some.
No, it was to move forward to pay the $34,200 was the original motion.
You good with that one still?
Yeah.
Me too. Any other questions or comments, Commissioners? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
The motion fails 3-2 with Commissioner O'Brien, Solari, and Flesher dissenting.
Then I make a motion to bring the contract back.
Second.
Got a motion to bring the contract back
Yes.
at the next meeting?
Yes.
And it's seconded by Commissioner Solari. Is there any further discussion?
Is there a dollar amount with that, or?
The contract's already, he's got it.
Yes, the contract amount is $34,065.
Yeah. Then that's the contract submitted to him by the county?
I'm sorry, $34,200. But yes, that was the contract that our office prepared and submitted to Mr.
And
McCullough.
was it signed by anybody at the county?
It was not signed by anybody at the county, to my knowledge. No, it was just signed by Mr. and Mrs. McCullough.
Let me just, I got to say this, and I know why it has to come back for the Board of County Commissioners, and I agree with that. But if you take it out of the government hands, it's kind of like me buying a new car and making a deal with a salesman, and then the sales manager's got to approve it. It gives them an out all the time, and that's where we are. And I think that we ought to have more confidence, with these things, and not be changing things. And the commission should have been making these changes, and not staff after the contract.
Okay, we've got a motion to bring it back. Any further comments, Commissioners? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, nay. That motion passes unanimously. It'll be back at the next meeting. Thank you.
On the 8th.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item 10B2 has been pulled. Public notice items, none. County administrator matters, none. Community development, Mr. Keating. Welcome.
Good morning again. Bob Keating, County Community Development Director. Back in April, the Agricultural Advisory Committee met, and they had Mr. Clay Henderson make a presentation to them. And Mr. Henderson is a former Volusia County Commissioner. He's an attorney, and he's a well-known conservationist in the state. I think he was instrumental in starting Volusia County's land acquisition program. And Mr. Henderson spoke about some of the tools to actually preserve agriculture, protect rural type of development, and to protect environmental resources. After the presentation, the Agricultural Advisory Committee members indicated that they concurred with Mr. Henderson, and they voted to ask the Board of County Commissioners to hold a workshop or a public meeting on these issues and tools that Mr. Henderson presented to them. Staff agrees with the Agricultural Advisory Committee that Mr. Henderson brought up some good issues. Actually, the county's doing many of these issues right now. Actually, I think in purchase of development rights, we're probably one of the leaders in the county, in the state, and a number of other preservation techniques that we've done. Staff's position, though, is we've got an opportunity to use another mechanism instead of having a separate public workshop or public meeting, and that's the valuation and appraisal report-based amendments to the comprehensive plan that the county needs to do within the next 6 or 8 months. Hopefully, we're going to start workshops probably in the next 2 months on the ear-based amendments, and staff's recommendation would be, instead of having a separate workshop or a public meeting, to have the Agricultural Advisory Committee be one of the committees that reviews the future land use element, the ear-based amendments to the future land use element. That will give the Agriculture Advisory Committee an opportunity to look at the county's overall land use policy from the perspective of agricultural preservation, and I think it's a good forum to do that. And that's what staff's recommendation is. I know Bob Adair is here, and I'm sure that he wants to give his input on this matter.
Yeah, ultimately, Commissioners, what this allows is the recommendations to come forward from the Agricultural Advisory Committee, and then still have the workshops that would take place, instead of it just being a standalone workshop for the Agricultural Advisory Committee to the County Commission. It would actually be a part of the workshops to be able to codify the results of the workshop in our comprehensive plan. So I believe, and I don't want to put words in the Agricultural Advisory Committee's former chairman's mouth, but so Bob, if you'd like to come up, I think this is going in the direction that we want to, and I just want to reiterate that on behalf of the commissioners. Welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Robert Adair, former president, or chairman of the Agricultural Advisory Committee, but still vice chairman. Also, I'm on the Indian River SWCD. What I wanted to do real quickly was try to shed some facts on the importance of us moving in some sort of a planning way towards a real perfect storm developing for ag in our county, 40,000 acres. A lot of this you know, but I'm going to go over it real quick, okay, because this is the big picture of ag. Basically, huge increases in crop inputs, energy, fuel, nitrogenous fertilizers, which come from petrochemicals. The other fertilizers, potassium and potash, are sky high. There's a monopoly on potash in Saskatchewan, Canada, our friends to the north, and they're holding us at bay. There has been no movements of that material other than up or straight, whereas with energy, it's up and down with the commodity market. Pesticide prices, a lot of these are organophosphates. They have petroleum base. They've gone sky high because they're being produced in China. China's now starting to put their regulatory process in, therefore their prices are going up. For example, Roundup has doubled in price over the last 2 years. Labor prices, I don't think I need to say a whole lot. Homeland Security, dealing with migrant labor and that type of issue. The crop prices are poor for orange juice. They're improving for grapefruit, where we're almost able to break even. That's how bad it is. Limitations on our water quality and quantity that we've been discussing. We are seeing increases in salt in our water. That reduces yield and limits yield. The Brazilian outlook, to give you an idea of what's going on in Brazil, the large producers are planting trees as fast as they die out because they bought huge nurseries because of greening disease. We know about this. This is real. But all the small producers, and small in Brazil is big in Florida, okay? So we're talking 5,000, 2,000 acre plantings in Brazil that have given up on citrus, juice citrus, and moved to sugarcane. So if that's a prognostication of what's going to happen here, we're in big trouble. The big issue, as I said, is greening. Let me throw a number at you. If you talk to the better citrus consultants in our state, we're the number one state. We're the number one citrus producing region in the world when you look at our agricultural resources. Lake Alfred is the mecca of citrus research. It could be 5 years till you have a GMO that's resistant to greening. The outlook for greening, if it continues to take place the way it's going right now, best numbers are 2 to 3 years, and we have a collapse. The future with the current recession is likely to remain in effect. I hope you would agree with that. Regarding property values for the next 2 to 4 years, is that a fair statement, Commissioner Slarry? I mean, are property prices going to come around, Mr. Robinson, in the next 2 years? I don't know. I don't think so. What I'm worried about is the growers are dipping into their cash reserves. They're not living off their income. They're not living off their crops. They're living off their savings. And that can only go on for so long. So we have this perfect storm. What are we going to do about it? Things aren't happening right now. We're in doldrums, whatever you want to call it. It's not just the August doldrums. So this is a great time for planning. I kind of agree with Mr. Keating, but what I really would like to do as a step in between what he's suggesting is try to get the best minds in our county together. Our county is in a great position compared to St. Lucie County that got wiped out with canker. Canker is like a cold. Greening's like cancer. Okay, so this is huge. And they had a federal bailout, $6,000+ per acre if they had greening. Whoopee, that wasn't all that bad, but there it sits. More for sale signs than citrus groves in St. Lucie County. What are we going to do about it? I was impressed by Mr. Henderson. He had some ideas that, with all due respect, we hadn't heard before. James Nicholas at Gainesville, brilliant on TDRs. We've talked about TDRs. Commissioner Davis, you know how long. I think you like the idea, I like the idea, but really nothing's happened. How do we make some of these good ideas happen? Maybe it's not TDRs. Maybe we can look at conservation easements, corridors, hamlets. Our new town, I'm told, by the Growth Awareness Committee, is not doable. It won't work. Planning knows that. Jeff Bass at Graves Brothers knows that. We know we like it, it looks pretty, but we can't do it. So how do we do this? So in short, I would suggest that we have workshops are expensive. Is that really the issue that's going on here?
No, what it is just trying to, instead of just workshopping it, go ahead and see to it that what comes out of the workshop goes directly into our comp plan.
Okay, workshops are directly proportional to the number of people that participate in that process. And I know the commissioners will, I know planning will, I don't know necessarily about the public. But what do you think about an idea that goes along with what Mr. Keating's suggesting and an idea that's come to me in this meeting today? Well, actually, in the past couple of days. The idea of having an ad hoc committee, possibly to meet with Clay Henderson. He may come down gratis. That would be great, right? Control our expenses. Come down and make some proposals. Look at Indian River County. Come and make some proposals. Possibly the ad hoc committee. Let me throw out some members. Ag Advisory Committee, Planning and Development, 2 or 3 big property owners. Need I say the Corrigans, possibly the Graves, possibly Victor Knight, who's in that area, with Planning and Zoning, Land Trust. This is what they do. Indian River Citrus League. One or more of the Board of County Commissioners, hopefully Commissioner Davis for his interest in agriculture, maybe the Cattlemen's Association, and whatever suggestions you all have. I really think we need to spend some time on looking at this, because I think your ag lands are getting ready to change dramatically in the next 2 to 3 years. SWCD, to validate that idea, is planning on putting on an ag forum November 20th in the Richardson Center that wants to discuss agricultural industry in Indian River County. Where have we been, where we are, where we're going. And they're saying these questions. What is the short, long-term forecast outlook projection for citrus production in Indian River County? What alternative crops, which there are none right now, related land use practices best provides a profitable and sustainable operation on both large and small acreage farms? What is the future for Indian River agriculture? What should the Indian River SWCD do to assist, to assure, and help it develop into this future? They don't know. And guess what? We voted to put a disclaimer on this that we don't know what to do. Because we don't want people to go to this meeting and say, okay, you guys have solved it for us. We're not going to guarantee it. That's how bad it is. What do you think?
I don't know how anybody, I'm sorry, I don't know how anybody could disagree with it.
No, I don't either. I don't see how it's much different than what Bob was putting forward, in that exactly what you're talking about doing is the first step that we would have as far as the workshop to be able to move it into the EAR for the comp plan.
I want a designated time and place and a period of hours to be able to do what I'm suggesting, in addition to what Bob's doing, to be able to give a possibly a package or at least a set of well-defined proposals to Mr. Keating.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Hold on. I mean, Bob, help me if I'm seeing something different, but whenever we do the EAR report, we have specific areas that we work on and in that to be able to put forth inside the comp plan. And Bob, Mr. Adair, my biggest concern is I don't want us to go through this and then not put anything in writing and have it a part of our comp plan. And so,
well, there's been a lot of that going on.
I know. That's exactly my point. So, Commissioner Wheeler.
Yeah, I like the ad hoc before we have the workshop, to get input from what all of you, when you get your minds together, come back with at the workshop. And the other thing that I like about the workshop is I think in the community overall, there's a big misunderstanding about the benefit of purchasing development rights or even transfer of development rights, but particularly purchasing development rights and the advantages to the county. And I think that would help continue to educate the advantages of that, and not the. I just talked to a lot of people over the Paget Branch and the Sexton property, and there's really people, our mindset, they don't understand it. It's almost like if I was going to sell you a house at a tremendously reduced rate that you could keep for the rest of your life and leave to your children, but I promised to go ahead and take care of all the maintenance on the house, to pay your insurance, pay your taxes and everything else, and you get to live there for the cost of the mortgage. And basically that's what development rights, when we purchase these development rights does. But I think it's a good idea, and I'd like to move forward with it, and if it comes out with something very positive, I'd like to see it part of the comp plan.
What's our timeline on that, Bob, for your EIR input?
The Board of County Commissioners, Department of Community Affairs approved our evaluation and appraisal report last February. We actually have a year and a half to adopt the EAR-based amendments. We hope to be significantly ahead of that, and we're pretty far along at drafting the EAR-based amendments now. We hope by the end of September or October to actually start workshops and committee meetings on EAR-based amendments. So it'll be coming up real soon.
Okay, how do you think is the best way for us to address Mr. Adair's concern about the having the ad hoc committee and truly getting not just planners and bureaucrats involved in the EAR part of it, but more so having the ad hoc committee be able to actively contribute in a time certain with some of the people that we're talking about, like the gentleman from Volusia County? How would we accomplish that?
I think we can use the Ag Advisory Committee as the nucleus and invite the other groups that Mr. Adair suggested, and have a meeting that focuses on the particular part of the future land use element that deals with ag preservation, and ask Mr. Henderson to come down and give his input.
So to have that as a part of the Ag Advisory Committee meeting, Mr. Henderson come back, but expand the scope of it that you're talking about with that ad hoc, the individuals. Bob, is that going?
Yeah, but the thing is, what's our power as the Agricultural Advisory? We already did what we wanted to do.
We did.
So you're coming back at us.
Right, and the difference is exactly, that's my point. The difference is we didn't have the other half of that there to be able to move it forward, and therefore nothing got in writing with it. And I understand your frustration.
I want to know what the Corrigans think about that. I feel like I'm over here on, well, I'd like to think I'm on Earth, but I'm in Indian River County, but I'm not on Mr. Corrigan's land. I don't know what he wants, what Graves really wants. So I think the power of this Ag Hoc Committee is that you're going to be able to express these ideas, and if they hit the floor and drop, so be it. But I think we need to know, what do these owners want? How bad is it? What do they want out of it? We all want to sell our land for a higher price, and farming in our county, to some extent, is a place to park your property or your holdings until a good offer comes by. I'm saying we've got a dark storm. The idea of holding it in citrus is not going to hold up.
No, and we have a storm where we don't really have
We got
a market
cattle
for real estate.
everywhere. Nothing against the Cattlemen's Association, but we get cattle on abandoned citrus, and that raises its own set of problems because the trees are still alive and still hold the disease. So
You don't feel like the suggestion then of of having this Ag Summit through the Ag Advisory Committee with the stakeholders involved, you feel like that would fall
I
short?
think we need to have a different center to meet in. I think we need to get out of that process and look at something new, suggesting ad hoc. Now, here's an idea.
Okay.
On November 20th, with this Ag Forum, we could meld that into this process. That would be on November 20th. It's at the Richardson Center. They're telling us we get it for free. I'm always afraid of that.
That's fine.
But if I could get your support to put that together, and we can wait till November 20th and try to assemble this, if I could work with the Ag Advisory Committee and SWCD to get their endorsement, their permission to do that, perhaps that would be a cost-effective way to do this.
Okay. Bob, help me.
Yes, that
Okay.
works.
All right, and they're going to be good. I don't want to feel like we're infringing on somebody else's workshop. If they clearly want to have us there and to be able to incorporate some of the
I'll have
ideas.
to check with David Gunter, who's chairman, I'm vice chairman, and I think I don't want to speak for him. He does not know about this idea, but I think I can call him about this and talk to him.
Well, and I think it's good to be. I mean, you're going to have half the players there. All we need to do is get the other half to be able to move this off center.
The landowners. The other thing is, there's a huge amount of environmental benefits to keeping ag in our county. So I don't know whether I said Audubon Association, with Dr. Baker's behind.
Well, they're clearly stakeholders.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All right, Commissioners, any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to suggest to Mr. Adair that his better course to contact Mr. Gunter is to see through the assistant to the Soil and Water Board to set up a special meeting.
You know what? I'll do it in the first meeting in September. How's that?
Yes, that should give you plenty of time for this November 20th forum.
Okay.
Bob, that fits our time frame to be able to start the workshop or ad hoc committee or whatever you want to call it to be able to institute okay.
Maybe forum. Forum?
Yeah,
We're using the
forum's
word
good.
forum.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do the same thing with the citrus league and get them on board. as soon
That's
as possible.
exactly.
I mentioned citrus.
Yes.
Absolutely, and open all, because you brought out something extremely important. I believe that land development rights and land rights and what property owners want to do, while that's extremely important, I just want to emphasize a statement that you made, Mr. Dare, that canker was a cold and greening is a cancer. I've seen it. Again, I've gone out to a couple of the groves in this past 2 weeks, and I've seen a lot, and it's a tremendous concern. And I believe that the input by the Citrus League is paramount. We need to address this issue, and there are some land ownership issues about abandoned groves that need to be brought up just about near immediately.
I appreciate your support.
Bob, what day of the week is November 20th?
Somebody help me.
It's got to be somebody with a
Friday.
calendar.
Yeah, and it's
It's a
right
Friday?
near Thanksgiving, but you should see, the scheduling
Yeah.
is incredible.
That's fine. No, I just was, okay. Well, I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and if we could, Commissioners, just to give it some formal authorization to be able to move forward with this, how about, I'd like to entertain a motion of some kind.
What are we looking at?
November the 20th.
I'll move, that we move forward on this.
And to move forward with the
Ad hoc.
the ad hoc committee.
Back to a workshop.
And
hoc
in order
first.
to be able to incorporate some of these things in the EAR.
So seconded.
Okay, got a motion from Commissioner Wheeler and a second from Commissioner Fleischer.
Of course, we need to know what they are before we can incorporate them.
Well, we got to know we're welcome, yeah, at their meeting. So there's a whole bunch, but at least be able to get some consensus from this board to move forward with this. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, November 20th is a Friday?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Next, we have the consideration of the extension of the temporary suspension of impact fees memorandum dated July 31st, 2009.
Mr. Chairman, back on March 24th, the Board of County Commissioners adopted an ordinance modifying the impact fees in the county and essentially suspending the collection of 5 impact fees from April 1st until September 30th. So if nothing is done, that temporary suspension will expire on September 30th, and after that, impact fees would increase to reflect the amount that's currently suspended. Staff looked at what has occurred over the first 4 months of the suspension and compared it to the previous 4 months, and activity is still real slow. We're down about 90% from what we were at the peak. Generally, the number of commercial permits that we took in the last 4 months was the same as we had taken in the previous 4 months, and we did take in some additional number of residential permits during that time. The numbers are a little bit skewed because for the couple of weeks before April 1st, we were trying to discourage people from applying and waiting until after April 1st so we didn't have to process refunds. So the numbers are probably really a little bit lower from the first 4-month period until the second 4-month period. The bottom line is the temporary suspension didn't have a big impact. It didn't create a lot of activity. It didn't create a lot more building. That being said, staff's position is we would encourage extending the temporary suspension, and along with the fact that there wasn't that much additional activity attributable to the suspended impact fees, the good news is we didn't really lose that much money because of it. Looking at the number of residential permits, we probably lost about $78,000 in impact fee income in that 4-month period, just attributable to the residential permit. But staff feels that given the economic situation, given the low amount of building and development that's occurring out there, and giving all the trade-offs involved, that the board should go ahead and extend the suspension for another 6 months. Now, you can't do that today. That has to be done at a public hearing after it's advertised, and this would be an amendment to the county's impact fee ordinance. If you direct staff to today, we will set up a public hearing in one of your meetings in September and have the hearing before the expiration would take effect, so it would be a seamless process and the suspension of the 5 impact fees would continue, and that's staff's recommendation.
I'll make a motion.
Commissioner Fletcher?
I'd like to make the motion to direct staff to set up the public hearing to ascertain if we should extend the 6 months.
I'll second that.
Got a motion to approve, to have staff move forward with the public hearing of the extension of the impact fees reduction. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to add, every time you have a set of numbers, there's always 2 ways to look at it. And if I look at the period of April 1st through the end of July, a lot of negative things were still going on, both globally and in the country and locally. Jobless rate was still increasing during that 4-month period. Foreclosures were still increasing during that 4-month period. And our commercial vacancies were still very high. So given all of that, I think the fact that we did have 16 new commercial projects come forward is actually a positive, and I don't see that as a negative. I think, if we got 1 or 2 coming forward during that time period was a positive. So I'm very much in favor of supporting the motion and eventually voting to extend the impact fee waiver.
Commissioner, I couldn't have said it any better. Any other comments?
I'll just make one for the same comments I made before when we've talked about this issue, is that I don't believe that impact fees are the way to either promote or not promote growth, so I'll be voting against it.
Against moving forward with the public hearing?
Correct.
Okay. Any further discussion? Anybody from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
The motion passes 4-1 with Commissioner Solari dissenting. Okay, thank you. All right, next we have the item 12A3, consideration of the 2009 Impact Fee Update Report, memorandum dated August 11th, 2009. Mr. Keating.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a PowerPoint on this item.
Well, he's in a lot.
Come on, Bob. You go.
And this item relates to the 2009 Impact Fee Report. And this Impact Fee Report, unlike the others that have been done, was done in-house by staff. And let me begin by giving you a little history. Back in 1986 was when Indian River County adopted its first impact fee ordinance, and that was just a traffic impact fee. And really that's considered among the first generation of impact fee ordinances. And it's quite a while before we updated that. We updated the traffic impact fee schedule in 97 and then again in 2004. In 2005 is when the board directed staff to actually establish 8 new impact fees, and those were approved in 2005. In 2007, the Duncan impact fee study update was done, and that was done quickly after the 2005 because the school board at that time thought that the school fees were low and asked the county to expedite an update of the impact fee ordinance, and the county did that. The board never approved the Duncan report, so it is currently unapproved. Back at your April 14th meeting, you did reconsider the Duncan report, and at that time you directed staff to do a couple things. First of all, you directed staff to update the impact fee schedule using Duncan's lower trip length value. And that relates to the fact that in the Duncan report, Duncan did an analysis of observed vehicle miles of travel on the roadway and compared it to actual vehicle miles of travel on the county's roadway system, and determined that trip lengths were about 23% too long. So the board said, go ahead and go back and modify the impact fee rate schedule to reflect that lower trip length. Also at that time, at the April 14th meeting, staff presented some information on the trip rates for banks. And that had come about because banks had been a topic of discussion at almost every impact fee meeting, and some information came out from another county in the state that after they did a separate study looking at bank trip rates, the latest ITE, Institute of Traffic Engineers, trip generation manual came out and showed that the bank without a drive-through trip rate went down about 90%. So he also asked us to update the traffic impact fee schedule with that. And staff has done that, and that's all reflected in the 2009 impact fee report that's in your backup. Now, to do this, staff used our standard traffic impact fee model. And this is actually the formula for the traffic impact fee model. It's really pretty simple. It's average trip rate times average trip length times the percent new trips times the average cost per lane mile divided by 2 divided by lane capacity minus the credits times the discount rate. And essentially what we did was we kept the values for the variables in there except for 3, and that's the average trip rate, the average trip length, and the credits. With average trip rate, staff looked at the new ITE Edition 8 trip generation manual, and we looked at all of the trip rates for all of the land uses that we have in our fee schedule. And you can see in your backup on page page 329, we have a comparison between the rates in the current impact fee formula and the rates in the 8th edition ITE manual. And essentially, what we found out was about 2/3 of the rates stayed the same or were lower, and about 1/3 of the rates were higher. But other than 1 or 2, the higher rates were almost insignificant in magnitude. So basically, we used the new 8th edition ITE rates and put them in the formula. Then we took the average trip length, which, as I said, Duncan determined was about 23% lower, and we put the average trip length in the formula. And also, Duncan had a different number for credits, and it was a little higher than the previous value, which would serve to lower the rates a little more. So we actually put the Duncan impact fee, traffic impact fee credit number in there. So these are the 3 variables that we changed in terms of value. We kept all the other variables the same. And again, most of the focus was on traffic impact fees. This is actually the traffic impact fee spreadsheet with putting the values for all those variables in the formula in place. And what this shows is it does show the 2009 impact fee, and it compares it to the current impact fee, and it shows the percent change. And actually, all but 5 land uses are going down. It's going to be less. This table is on page 333 of your backup, but it shows in terms of traffic impact fee rates, like most of the residential categories are going down about 13 or 14%, and the percentage reduction on the others varies. As I indicated, banks are significantly different because the trip rate went down quite a bit. You can see that a bank without a drive-through actually is going down 93%. So that is a really significant reduction. This is just the rest of that spreadsheet. Again, it's looking at the percent change from the 2009 traffic impact fees to what we have currently. Besides those changes, we took the opportunity to make a few other changes to the entire impact fee schedule. What we did was, for all of the impact fees, the entire 9 impact fees, we rounded off the numbers to make them whole dollars instead of having cents in there. Just, it makes it a little better administratively to deal with it. We also consolidated several land use categories. In our current traffic impact fee schedule, we have 4 land use categories for retail centers. We consolidated those into 1. We have 2 office categories now. We consolidated those into 1. And we had 2 government office categories that we consolidated into 1. And in the new fee schedule, all of the impact fees except 5 are going down, and the 5 are land uses that we really don't get into much. The 5 that are higher are ACLF, high schools, elementary schools, tennis courts, and racket clubs. Those are the only 5 that are going up. And really, those are going up because of the changes in the trip rates in the ITE 8th edition manual. This spreadsheet here shows the impact fees for all 9 categories that we have, shows you by land use type. Basically, most of the impact fees are the same. The difference is the traffic impact fee rates. Generally, the traffic impact fee is about half of the total impact fee amount, so you'll see that the percentage reduction when you look at all the impact fees, is generally around half of what it is when you just look at traffic impact fees. And again, this is the second page of that spreadsheet. One other thing I want to point out is in attachment 2 to the staff report, we've shown the new impact fee rates with the 5 suspended fees being taken out of consideration, and that shows even more reductions than this does now. So again, just like the previous item, just like the temporary suspension, this is something that you can't adopt right now. You can approve the 2009 impact fee study, and you can give staff direction to go ahead and advertise for a public hearing and bring that forth. And if you do that, we will bring both of those together, the temporary suspension and the updating of the impact fee schedule. So staff's recommendation is that you approve the impact fee report and authorize staff to advertise for and go ahead and process a public hearing to adopt the revised impact fee rate schedule. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Commissioners, any questions? Seeing none.
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
Got a motion to approve staff recommendation, or move to approve the 2009 impact fee report, and then to authorize staff to move forward with advertising and schedule public hearings to adopt the revised impact fee rate schedule. Is there any motion from Commissioner O'Brien, a second from Commissioner, the other way around?
Yeah.
A motion from Commissioner Solari with a second from Commissioner O'Brien, and now is open for discussion. Commissioner Wheeler.
Isn't this the same report that we couldn't get approved twice before?
No. Oh, heavens, no.
The traffic report? The impact fee, traffic fee, or the import? Okay, you're just talking about the traffic report, or you're talking about the entire impact fee report?
It's the entire impact fee report is what we did here. Almost all the changes.
Is that what we turned down? We had trouble, couldn't. I agree. I think we should approve this, but I think twice before we couldn't get it approved.
And
maybe we won't this time.
Let me tell you, probably the biggest thing is when Duncan did his study, it was during the peak of the development boom, and he came up with a cost per lane mile that was about double what we're using now, which is why the fees went way up. We're using the current cost per lane mile, not the new higher Duncan one.
And so, Commissioner Wheeler, the difference is those reductions that you see, and here's the reason why I'm supporting this, not the wild increases that we were looking at the last go-round.
Okay.
Okay. Any comments from the public on this? Yes, Ms. Renzi, please come forward. Mr. Johnson, if you would, please also. Welcome.
Good morning. Renee Renzi, Waverly Place, Vero Beach. All this discussion of impact fees takes me back several years to when the county commission at that time decided that they would pay the state's expenses on widening Route 60 west of town. And to cover that expense, they had to take out a loan, and the state would not be reimbursing them for the interest on that loan. So to compensate, the commission decided to increase impact fees within an 8-mile radius of Route 60 to pay for the interest on the loan. Now, with all this messing about with impact fees, how deep a hole have we got into on that whole plan?
Mr. Keating, if I'm not mistaken, first of all, we didn't, we advanced the money.
Yes, we advanced the money.
And we did not have to get a loan. We took that out of the current accounts that we had that cash sitting in the current accounts and did some transfers. But in addition, just to make sure that I'm clear on it, that is not being affected at all by this, the State Road 60 impact fees?
That is correct. We're not making any changes to those fees.
And the state's paying us interest on the money.
Right. Initially, the state's first proposal was that they would not reimburse us for interest, but now the agreement contains that they're going to pay us for any interest that they earn on our funds on deposit there.
Ms. Renzi, that is a special impact fee in addition to everything else. And that's not even being discussed here today. This is the impact fees on those that are at more than...
So first you said we're not in the hole for the interest, right?
Jason?
The state is going to reimburse us. They've put the money in an interest-bearing account, and all the remaining interest comes back to the county at the end of the agreement.
Okay. And we did not take a loan out. So the interest is not interest we would pay on a loan. It was lost income interest. Okay, so there's no loan that the county took out. We had cash in one bucket, and we advanced it to DOT, so we didn't take a loan out.
Okay.
It's just loss of interest.
So do we know yet when the state's going to reimburse us for that?
The first payment on the 66 to 82nd Avenue widening was due July 1st of this year. We've invoiced the state for that and anticipate receiving that first payment. They're going to repay that in 8 quarterly payments over the next 2 years, that $23.8 million for that
Good.
case.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, welcome.
Bob Johnson, Corwin Subdivision. I would like to see at this public hearing a presentation on a item that was in this spring MPO item. And this is where there's a proposal that was recommended by a national commission to tax individuals based on mileage versus peak hours. And the proposal by this national commission was to do away with the gas tax. And what I'd like to see is a comparison of if the county was to implement paying tax based on mileage driven versus peak hour for revenues to replace the revenues for road construction. So this was in this issue spring of 2000, and I read in the recent Press Journal where there's a pilot program that's been implemented in South Florida with I think 1,500 automobiles where they're going to place GPS devices on automobiles and monitor this. This is going to be a program that's coming down the road, and I would like to see us make a comparison, or at least have the county briefed on what this program is all about and the study that was done, and in anticipation of what the impact would be. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Anyone else wish to speak? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion on the floor to, oh, yes, ma'am.
Pardon me. Good morning. I'm Nancy Offit for the Treasure Coast Builders Association. I just want to make a distinction between this information and the Duncan report. All we've ever asked for is accurate numbers, consistent methodology, and current data. And I would say that staff's effort seems to be providing that.
A lot more in line.
In contrast.
Yes, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Offit. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. It's been requested to have a brief break. Commissioners, I did have a 12 o'clock appointment. I don't know how much of this we have left to go through, how fast you think it would be. Would you like to try to grind through this? And during this break, let me see if I can move my 12 o'clock appointment around a little bit, or what's your pleasure? Or do you want to break at 12? Give me some direction, or I'll just make the call. Okay, what I'll do is I'll see if I can adjust my appointment in light of the little bit of schedule we have left during the break, and we'll reconvene in 5 minutes. Say a thing. Meeting will come back to order. Okay, we will not take a recess at noon. We'll go ahead and grind through the agenda. And if I'm not mistaken, this time we left off on the consideration, which was item 3. Now we are on item 4, which is consideration of proposed changes to sidewalk requirement memorandum dated August 11th, 2009. That would be page 343 through 368 in your backup. Mr. Bowling, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This particular item is for the board to generally consider some proposed changes to sidewalk requirements, indicate if they want to move forward with those, and then the process that they would like to use for adoption. Just a little bit of backup. This actually has come about from an ad hoc development committee that has been focusing for some time now addressing problems resulting from the credit crisis. Some of the problems that occur is renewing and obtaining security for developments can be difficult, and that crisis persists to this day. The first set of recommendations from this group that you all considered was in February of this year earlier, and you did adopt an emergency ordinance in February that addressed some of the issues, including a maintenance security period was reduced from 3 years to 1 year, and it also adopted a deferral option to defer, basically mothball projects or phases of projects and give the option to the developer to basically put those on hold. That also puts security obligations on hold. Now there's a second set of recommendations for you all to consider generally this morning that relates to sidewalk requirements. In fact, this was mentioned back in February that this was kind of the next part of the existing requirements to look at. The proposal represents a compromise between this ad hoc committee and staff looking at the current county requirement, which obligates developers to construct sidewalks up front or post security. Other jurisdictions have various approaches. Some have the same approach. Some allow sidewalks to be done on a segment-by-segment basis in front of lots, to be built while a house is being constructed on a lot. And there's actually kind of a combination approach. And that's essentially what the proposal is, and there's a draft ordinance in your backup that proposes the compromise, which is to have developers responsible for constructing or posting security for internal sidewalks at project entrances where they connect kind of to the outside world and along common areas, and then have the builder or lot owner provide sidewalk in front of an individual unit prior to CO for that unit. That addresses some of the concerns of the development community where sidewalks in front of lots, there may be regrading, construction activity, when they're building a unit on that lot, and it's wasteful, and it keeps them from having to post security and front those costs and then have the sidewalk destroyed during construction activities. Other changes that are proposed in the draft are to reduce the minimum internal sidewalk width from 5 feet back to 4 feet, to codify a requirement that we put into practice for some time, to make sure that the internal sidewalk system is designed to connect to the external sidewalk system outside of the project. There's also what I'll just call a 90% complete rule for multiple phase projects, and that's to make sure that there aren't significant gaps in sidewalks for say, a first phase before a developer completes a second phase and tries to keep those sidewalk gaps down to a minimum. Also, there is an allowance for a developer to opt to post security for what they would be required to do along entrances or common areas if they needed to perform construction on a common area, but it does limit it to 2 months, so it keeps those sidewalk, the length of time a sidewalk would not be done along a common area, keeps it down to a 2-year time frame. Decisions for the board to make is to give input to staff if they agree with the concept. Any revisions at this point in time that they see, we could make those adjustments to the ordinance. And there's really 2 options for processing this draft. One would be to process it as an emergency ordinance, like you did in February, and adopt at your next meeting, which is on September 8th. And if you did that, that would actually give staff time to advertise the change and get a little more input from interested parties and come back to you on September 8th. The other process is the conventional land development regulation amendment process, which goes through the Professional Services Advisory Committee, Planning and Zoning Commission, and then to you all. But that takes 3 to 4 months. And there are some development projects that have sidewalk security coming due. And without this change in the emergency ordinance process, they could have some difficulties with those security issues. Either process does allow some time for tweaking. And again, the September 8th date allows for a courtesy advertisement. Obviously, in most cases, staff thinks that the conventional LDR amendment process is certainly a good process to go through, but in this case, there seems to be some urgency in the matter. And staff recommends that the board give us any input on revisions you see necessary already to the draft, and that you direct us to prepare an emergency ordinance for adoption at your next meeting, which is September 8th.
Okay. All right, Commissioners, any questions?
I've just got one.
Go ahead.
On that 4 foot, 5 foot, does the 4 foot or the 5 foot apply to the common areas and entrances?
The 4 foot would apply to any internal sidewalk in the project, which would include what goes in front of common areas, internal to a project, or in front of a lot. In other words, it would set the minimum at 4 feet throughout the internal. They could choose to go wider, but it would have to be at least 4 feet.
And just for definitional purposes, is an entranceway internal or external?
Internal.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, Commissioners, what's your, I would just assume let's go ahead and do this on the 8th, and it gives us time to tweak it on the fly.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion to instruct staff to move this forward as a emergency ordinance for September 8th.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Brien, and I'll second that. And is now open for discussion. If there is no discussion or any further comment, we'll proceed to vote. Yes, sir.
I'd just like to thank some of the people involved in this. Bruce Barquette worked real hard. Devin, Peter Robinson involved, Chuck Meckling. And the sidewalk thing was where we had a real issue. I think staff and myself felt that we didn't want these gaps out there indefinitely. The development side said, well, we don't think we should have to be responsible for them at all. And so we kind of came up with the 90% rule as a compromise, and I think it's a good, fair compromise. I think Bruce and Chuck have shopped it around to everybody else out there, and they seem to have a good consensus that this is a fair compromise. So I think it's good. I think the county has worked hard to accommodate the development side. I think the builders and stuff came forward and worked with us as well, and so I think this all has worked out pretty good. So
great, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next, we have item 12.5, which was moved from the consent, which is the request to approve the neighborhood stabilization.
No, we pulled entirely.
That's right. Thank you. That one didn't take long. Next, we move to utility services, which is 12I1. It is the CDM work order for number 15, the lift stations and...
New staff recommendation.
Second. Correct it to 12J1 from I1.
Yes, 12J1, thank you. I've got a motion to approve from Commissioner O'Brien with a second from Commissioner Fletcher to approve staff recommendation. Any discussion on the lift station, gentlemen? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passed unanimously. Next, we have the 12J2, which is the South County RO Water Treatment Plant, Professional Services by Kimley Horn. Work order number 14, amendment number 3.
Move staff recommendation.
Thank you, Commissioner Fletcher, and I'll second that. And if there's no discussion, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Work order number 13, which is the design and permitting and construction for the well number 7 at the South County RO facility.
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
Do you have one question there, Mr. Chairman?
Okay, we've got a motion from Commissioner Solari and a second from Commissioner Fletcher, and now open for questions. Commissioner O'Brien.
Yes, on this particular item, it's a total project cost of $1.1 million, but the engineering fee is $172,000, which is a little over 15%. I think normally the engineering is usually about 10% of a project, so just a question why this one seems a little bit higher.
Yeah, Mike Hotchkiss, Capital Projects Manager with Utilities Department. I think it includes all their construction services plus their design, and it varies usually anywhere from 12 to 17%. Sometimes it's a little bit higher, and this is a little bit high on the high range, but that's, usually if it didn't go over that, we cut it off about that.
Okay, it does include the construction oversight?
Construction service,
Okay.
but it does include that. Also includes bidding services as well as permitting services too, so.
Thank you.
This is, for the lack of a better term, a promulgated rate that is, whenever we did our RFQ, they put forward.
Right.
I mean, so if we use this firm or another firm, it would still
It's
be the
usually about the
same
same
rate
thing. We
per
hold
hour.
them to that same percentage,
Yes.
right.
Okay. All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next, we have the utility construction standards dated July 2009, UCP number 3110, memorandum dated July 8, 2009.
For approval.
Thank you, Commissioner Wheeler, and for the motion, and second from Commissioner O'Brien. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. That motion passes unanimously. Consulting Services Amendment Number 3, Work Order Number 5, with PBS&J for permitting design and construction of the West Wastewater Treatment Facility Expansion, UCP Number 2621.
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
Got a motion from Commissioner Flesher to approve staff recommendation with a second from Commissioner O'Brien. Is there any discussion, Commissioners? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Excuse me. The motion passes unanimously. County Attorney Matters, Ms. Fell.
Mr. DeBraw will be addressing those two matters.
Mr. DeBraw, welcome.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Bill DeBraw, Deputy County Attorney. The first matter that we have up before us is an updated unconditional offer for a parcel of land on the corner of 66th Avenue and 57th Street. This is owned by the Abazis, Stephen William and Evan Abazis, parcels 102 and 104. The county needs approximately 6.2 acres of property from the Abazis. Parcel 102 is a 4-acre right-of-way site that runs along 66th Avenue. Parcel 401 is a 2.2-acre pond site that will be located at the corner of 57th and 66th. We had previously extended unconditional offers to the Abazis on these parcels. We have had no response. We're getting ready to file the lawsuit, so we had to go ahead and update the appraisals. The appraisal prices came in a little bit higher, so we needed to go ahead and refresh our unconditional offers to make them reflect the appraisal price. So if you recall, this is the area where the county entered into an interlocal agreement with the school district for advanced construction of the turn lane on 66th as it heads into the new Storm Grove Middle School on 57th Avenue. Staff is recommending in this matter an updated unconditional offer to purchase the necessary right-of-way only, just the right-of-way in the pond site at $402,500, and an unconditional offer to purchase the entire parcel for $560,740. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions, Commissioners?
Yeah, what were the dates of the two appraisals?
This appraisal, the most recent one, is July, I believe, Commissioner. The earlier one was dated December 17th. This most current one is in July.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, Commissioners, what's your pleasure? I'll second it.
Move staff recommendation.
Thank you. I'll second it. And now, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. DeBraw.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next matter before you is a necessity of take resolution for John and Deborah Morato. They are located at 5215 66th Avenue. They have a 2-acre parcel of property with a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,900 square foot plus or minus house. The right-of-way line in this matter will come about 5 feet from their front door, so it's going to render the house economically non-viable. The county needs a little better than 2/3 of an acre of right-of-way in this area. There is a Murphy or TIF reservation that consists of almost half an acre, 0.485
5 acres of the 2/3 of an acre that we need. We went ahead and ignored that for the purposes of right-of-way acquisition due to the previous order of the board. For a resolution of necessity, we do not require a public hearing. We just have to move on, getting the necessary authority from the board to proceed in eminent domain and take the necessary property. And that is staff's recommendation.
Move staff recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Got a motion, I'll second that one too. And is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. DeBral. That moves us to the Commissioners' Matters, and down to Commissioner Wheeler, which is C1, which is the request for discussion, 1 cent optional sales tax purchases for Emergency Services District, memorandum dated August 18, 2009. Commissioner Wheeler.
I requested after one of the meetings here recently for Jason to put some numbers together, which he did. And what this has done, the Emergency Services District is a special taxing district that applies to the entire county with the exception of Indian River Shores. And what we've done in the past is we've spent about $3,897,807. I'm sorry, we've spent about $339,000 on fire equipment, and I would assume probably, I'm not sure of the dates in here, but probably would have included some sheriff's cars, depending on how far back we go. Bottom line is, though, if this was all fire equipment for the Emergency Services District, municipalities that are part of this, which are all of them except for Indian River Shores, should have paid their fair share because this comes from the 1 cent optional sales tax. So the unincorporated area has paid the lion's share of this, and the municipalities have not had to contribute because the county didn't ask them to, which amounted to about $1,441,888. If this had have been done in the fire district, for instance, and the taxing district, or the Emergency Services District, it would have cost the city an additional in taxes about $1,675,000. And the point to this is I'd like to make a motion that this practice does not continue, that we should do the accounting fairly and accurately, and if it is the fire district, then either the municipalities have to participate with a 1 cent optional sales tax as we do to buy equipment, which is allowed by the state, or we need to add it to the millage rate of the fire district, so all people pay equally who are provided service from the Emergency Services District.
I understand where you're coming from exactly, Commissioner, and I don't think that us asking them to allocate their portion of a 1 cent optional sales tax is going to be what they're willing to do.
Well, I think they have an option, either that or you put it in the district. In other words, let's say we're going to spend $1 million next year on fire equipment and our intention is to do this out of 1 cent optional sales tax, then the municipalities would be requested to participate. And if they say no, then we simply use the taxing district to raise that money, where they will participate through the property taxes.
Right. Okay. And Commissioner, sorry.
I'll second the motion, but I'd like to ask Commissioner Wheeler if you want to transfer the $0809 out of the 1 cent sales tax into the MSTU. That's about 75% of the dollars. Sure. And my understanding is there's still time to do that if you'd like.
Wait, say that one more time.
The bulk of these dollars that have come out of the 1 cent sales tax are in the 0809 budget.
Okay.
And there's still time, as I understand it, to transfer that out of the 1 cent sales tax and use reserve funds from the MSTU to pay for it.
We could use reserve funds, but we could not do what Commissioner Wheeler's talking about because we cannot go over the millage that we've set for the Emergency Services District.
And I brought that up during budget also.
You understand what I'm saying?
I got you.
We could transfer it. It would come out of fund balance.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's right.
No, we come out of fund balance. We could not make it so that we can't modify the 910 budget.
What I meant was, I wasn't talking about modifying the 910 budget at this time.
Well, to accommodate for the shortfall. It would clearly come out of fund balance.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know that would solve the problem. If it comes out of the fund balance, of course, that has been contributed, depending on which budget it's in, by the cities and so on and so forth through the ad valorem tax, depending on which fund balance you take it out of.
Oh, which would be the MSTU fund,
Emergency
the Emergency Services Fund balance,
Yeah.
which they all contributed to.
Right. Yeah, and I would support that. I think what we're doing, we're playing with numbers to try and keep millage rates down, and it's not accurate accounting.
Okay.
I agree with you, Commissioner Sullivan.
Commissioner O'Brien.
Yeah, just a couple of things. I agree pretty much in principle with where Commissioner Wheeler is going here, but just a couple of things to keep in mind. If we move all of the capital cost emergency services into the ad valorem part of the emergency service district, I think that's good to give greater transparency to the actual cost to the taxpayers to provide that service. And it will benefit some other residents that can actually itemize their real estate taxes on their income tax return instead of a hidden tax or a franchise fee or something like that. So from that point of view, it does make sense. But on the other side, keep in mind that the sales tax is paid for by a lot of tourists and visitors and is not carried as a burden by the taxpayers here in the county. I think a good portion of that sales tax is outside dollars contributing to, and if we move, Jason supplied about $5 million over 5 years. So if we look at additional $1 million of revenue generated by ad valorem taxes in the Emergency Services District, it's about a 0.08 increase in the millage rate, which on your typical $200,000 house with a $50,000 homestead exemption would be about a $12 increase. So I agree. I think it's good to shift it and we get the true cost of providing that service, but we will have to keep in mind that it will result not only in the municipalities but countywide a slight bump in their taxes to cover that. Just bring that up to make sure we know exactly what we're doing here and how it impacts everybody.
Well, and I think really an appropriate way to look at this and how these dollars were probably allocated in that fashion is you have somebody coming here to shop at the mall. While they're here at the mall, they have an accident. They don't own property here, but they were shopping at the mall. Now, granted, that little bit, the $3 they paid in sales tax doesn't justify it, but it does justify the thought process of using some of the 1 cent optional sales tax in the emergency services district. So, I can't say that Commissioner Wheeler is wrong. He's got a good point, but I like what you're talking about, Commissioner. It certainly does make it so that it's going to be a substantial increase on the taxpayer.
Well, it's kind of like if the five of us have a responsibility to pay the bill for something, and I say because I'm making more money than you are, the other four of you, I'll go ahead and pay it out of my pocket. And basically that's what the county's doing. It's like there's 5 people here, there's 4 municipalities in the county. They all get a portion of 1 cent optional sales tax. They're all serviced by the Emergency Service District. So either we should all contribute equally, and there's only 2 ways to do that. Either the municipalities pay and agree to pay their portion out of the 1 cent optional sales tax, or it's through ad valorem tax. But all communities are paying equally for equal service, rather than it just being put on the backs of the people in the unincorporated area.
Well, and probably the best thing for us to do is to have the all or none policy, because I don't think it's fair for Sebastian, or let's just say a community. They'll say, yeah, we'd like to take it out of our 1 cent optional sales tax.
Well, it has to be all.
That's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
we need to go ahead and just set that policy, and instead of even asking, I'd say either make up our mind whether we're going to do it or not out of 1 cent optional sales tax.
Let me try a motion that we not use 1 cent optional sales tax to purchase equipment for the fire district or the emergency services district unless all 4 municipalities participate.
It's the only fair way of doing it.
Yeah, but there's not much of a chance that they're going to agree
Well,
to that.
it's their choice. Yeah, and if they don't, then it goes into ad valorem tax.
I'll second the amended motion.
Okay. And now we have, Mr. Brown, you need to say something. Okay. You look like...
One more clarification. Does that include the 08-09 portion, Commissioner?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Everybody clear? Mr. Baird, you got anything you need to add to this?
So we're gonna.
No, just a point of clarification. All the items you see that we spent that money on over the last 5 years, it was not moving stock. It was all infrastructure. Because of the hurricanes, we used it. We did not buy any fire trucks. I just want everyone to know that. So we've for the last 5 years, we have not used this for fire trucks.
And going forward, the expenses will probably not be as high year after year. This 5 years was probably an inordinate amount because we had the hurricanes and we replaced and renovated a lot of stations. So moving forward, we would just have those additional stations that are scheduled in the replacement rolling stock as we go.
But philosophically, from the budget side, you're in line with this?
From a tax equity standpoint, this is a more equitable way to distribute.
Okay. All right. We've got an amended motion, or actually, Jeff, we'll just call it a regular motion on the floor that we take those sales tax dollars out for 08-09 fiscal year, as well as in moving forward, if all the municipalities don't participate with optional sales tax, then the millage rate reflects that in the emergency services district. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner O'Brien.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. It is that time of year again.
Yes, it is.
Getting ready for football season. Coming up on Friday, August 28th, is the 4th annual kickoff classic between the Fighting Indians of Vero Beach High School and, let's see, winners of the last 3 in a row, 2 in a row, something like that, against the Fighting Sharks from Sebastian River. And last year it was held at Sebastian River at Shark Stadium. They did a great job of hosting it, and then they're going to be hosting again this year. The kids, I know the Vero kids have been out there, and I'm sure the Sebastian kids have been working hard. They all have their, optional summer conditioning program, and 2 days have started, and the kids have been working hard. So just want to have the whole community come out. This is I think it's great for the county. These two teams are playing each other. Also, there's talk now, the principals, we got 2 new principals, and the athletic directors are working to make this a real game, not the kickoff classic, but a game that counts on their schedule, and that'll generate even a little bit more excitement for them. And also, would be neglected, I didn't mention the bands. Vero Beach and Sebastian just wrapped up their band camps last week. Kids, all these kids have been working hard. It's great to see them out there, and just would like the whole community to come out and support both teams, and of course, cheer on the Fighting Indians to victory once again.
Might I, since I have control of the floor here?
Sure, you will.
Absolutely, absolutely. But in light of what you said, clearly the Dollars for Scholars, they're having a barbecue for anybody that has an interest. For $50, the tickets go to the Dollars for Scholars, which is basically the central agency, if you will, made up of volunteers that provide scholarship materials, applications, and basically handle a one-stop area for individual young adults that are graduating and going to college to get scholarships. And that's what this is all about. It's obviously that time of year whenever the football season happens. The birds sing prettier, the sky is bluer, the sun is shinier, and it all starts off at Sharks Stadium this Friday, not this Friday, but the next Friday coming up.
2 weeks, yep.
2 weeks from, and it'll be a good opportunity to go out there and pull for the home teams. Well, of course, both of them being the home teams.
Yep.
And,
I'm glad to see you wearing your red tie, though, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I'm a graduate of Vero Beach High School. I'm a graduate of Vero Beach High School because Sebastian wasn't there whenever I was going to school. It was Cow Pasture. But absolutely, my son's in the band at Sebastian River High School, and it's going to be a fun time.
Only comment I would have is, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to see you get a bigger hat.
Mr. Chairman, you brought up a very interesting point with throwing in the Dollars for Scholars. I think all of the citizens, all of the students from both schools will win because of Dollars for Scholars, and the future of Indian River County is at stake. So please come and attend, and if you can, wear blue. You can't hide that Shark pride. So hang tight, and I understand that Coach has been regrouping this year to break that factor that you brought out. So
we shall see those.
Nonetheless, I think all of the students of Indian River County, all the citizens will be gaining by this event.
Yeah, absolutely. It should be a great night. So just hope the community can come out and support these hardworking kids, both on the football teams and on the band. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Go Sharks.
All right. Well, Commissioner Slurry, it can't be just as important as what we just talked about, but go ahead.
Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, for all those who want excitement, you can leave now. A little bit about fire hydrant maintenance. Initially, there were 2 items to this. Actually, one is now moot given the county attorney's memo. And basically, I'm going to suggest that the board goes with the recommendation of the county attorney, which is to notify Fellsmere and Vero Beach that the inspection and maintenance of hydrants and water systems which they now own are their responsibility according to state law, and that we, Indian River County, will no longer be honoring invoices attempting to get us to pay for what ought to be under state law, what are under state law, their charges.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion.
Second.
Got a motion from Commissioner Solari.
What's law?
It's like a law, but
I knew you would understand.
Yeah, it's a law north of the Mason-Dixon line.
I'm happy to interpret it any time.
Anyway, I think it's a good law.
Well, certainly is a good law.
We've got a motion on the floor. You can tell it's been a long one. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Yes, Commissioner Solari.
And the second item is more to just get a conversation started. Some time ago, well, during the last March, when Mr. Collins' contract was under discussion, he noted that he was going to, this was going to be his last year, and suggested that we begin discussions about hiring a new county attorney sometime in August or September, so I just wanted to get us all thinking about it. I have some thoughts down there about things we might want to ask about it, but I think it would probably be helpful if the county attorney and the county administrator paid attention to both the thoughts I have for discussion and any other thoughts any other commissioners give them over the next couple of weeks, and perhaps make a presentation to us about what they think is the best process going forward, and maybe have that in the second meeting of September.
And in addition to that, I know there's several commissioners that have expressed some concerns about whether even to have it be a contract position.
And actually, those are the type of things that ought to come out now.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be a contract or not a contract, but there are probably things in the existing contract that the commissioners absolutely wouldn't want seen going forward. And it's probably best for them to come out now as opposed to during actual contract negotiations with the attorney.
I think if on the questionnaire, that whatever goes out when they start the search, or if we do a search, simply one of the questions could be, would you be willing to serve without a contract? And at least you could weigh that at the time. And there's, supposed to work at the will of the commission, but with the contracts and the lucrativeness of them, they actually have a lot more property rights than the guy that's driving our dump trucks that may get 2 or 3 weeks severance pay if he's terminated without cause.
I'm perfectly happy with that.
Yeah.
I think but those are the type of things that ought to come out at the beginning of the process. As
I
opposed to
agree.
the end.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
Yeah. Okay.
I want that in the form of a motion that we ask the county administrator and county attorney to come back in the second week of September, the second meeting in September, and address some of these issues and get this process started.
And again, the county attorney is gone on vacation now for...
Yes, Commissioner, thank you. The county attorney has seen this memo, has reviewed it, and told me that while he's on vacation, he will be working on some of the items set forth in here. So he anticipates being fully prepared for that meeting.
That's very encouraging.
Yes.
Okay. All right. You want to do a motion?
That is in the form of a motion.
I seconded it.
Got a second from a motion from Commissioner Solari, second from Commissioner Wheeler. Mr. Sexton, anything you need to add? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next moves us to special districts and boards.
I'm going to move the approval of the minutes of the meetings of April 14th, 21st, and May 12th.
Second.
Thank you very much, much. All those, and if there's no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Item special districts and board under 15B4.
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
Thank you. That would move staff recommendation from Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Wheeler. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Environmental Control Board.
Move approval of the minutes of the meeting of May 5th, 2009.
On both.
Thank you. I got a motion for the minutes from May 5th from Commissioner Solari, second from Commissioner Flesher. No discussion, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. And quarterly reports.
Move to accept report.
Okay. And got a motion to accept the report from Commissioner Solari. O'Brien, second from Commissioner Flesher. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. If there's no further business to be transacted at this time, I declare this meeting adjourned.